Chapter 21 Big Medicine and Medicine Cultivator. Hua Wen and Hua Wu were two heroes who had earned the moniker Lingshui Twin Heroes many years ago, and they were also medicine cultivators. Relying on the accidentally obtained Jade Sword True Understanding, they bred and released numerous big medicines, not 100 but certainly dozens, qualifying them as professional medicine cultivators. Having seen too many medicine people and knowing the reality, they felt a thrilling sense of control over the confusion, pain, regret, anger, fear, and despair displayed by those continuously begging for mercy yet still becoming mere medicinal juices. Yes, even though big medicines were humans in their eyes, they were like herbs in the field, completely at their mercy to be harvested. They even enjoyed watching the despair on the faces of these big medicines, and the more intense the emotions, the richer and more effective the medicinal juice produced. This was the first time a big medicine made them feel threatened, even giving them the illusion that the big medicine might bite. It was too extreme. Were those from the Thunder God and Mother sect crazy to kill on a whim? What intrigued them more was this big medicine swordsmanship. That was clearly the Jade Sword Finger from Jade Sword True Understanding. So why was it so powerful? Yes, this piercing strength was even stronger than theirs. If they hadn't detected the trace of this big medicine long ago, using Jade Sword Distant Fragrance to sense and acknowledging that the person indeed had no true chi inside them at that time, they would have thought it's an old demon pretending to be young. An old demon that consumed big medicines more fiercely and ruthlessly than them. The two brothers exchanged glances, clearly understanding each other's thoughts. This big medicine had secrets. Although the hand technique of that sword finger was the same as theirs, the sword chi emitted carried a white glow, which was significantly different from theirs. This small difference was the key to the formidable power of the opponent's sword finger. If they could acquire this secret, their strength could rise by more than just a level. Yes, this big medicine had only started cultivating for a few months yet managed to reach such a level, indicating how astonishing the secret was. There definitely was some serendipity that made the opponent so formidable, and they needed to thoroughly uncover this secret. Hua Wen and Hua Wu, who roamed the martial world for many years, possessed many tricks besides Jade Sword True Understanding, and believed they could control the situation even with a fierce big medicine. They planned to approach this big medicine under the guise of being senior friends to extract the secret. The 5 Thunder listening disciples of Thunder God and Mother sect were dead, leaving the wilderness silent again apart from the rolling thunder. The merchant team's view of Duan Yun had already changed, filled with much more reverence and fear. Previously, 3 people from the merchant team thought Duan Yun was just a novice since he was young and carried a cheap sword, respectfully addressing him as young hero based on the civility of a businessman, who would have thought he would be so formidable. He killed 5 freaks with flutes sticking out of their heads with a flick of his finger, without blinking an eye. What kind of monster was this? Not just them, but even the 2 medicine cultivators Hua Wen and Hua Wu were not at ease. At that moment, Duan Yun walked over and began searching the bodies. His biggest regret after wiping out the Xuancheng gang last time was that he didn't search the bodies due to being nervous, which is why he remained poor. This time, he naturally wouldn't forget. Honestly, searching the bodies was quite thrilling, especially since these corpses clearly didn't look like good folks. Seeing the deep, black holes in their heads, along with the slender iron flutes inserted there, gave Duan Yun the illusion of searching monsters. It probably took so long to kill the first Thunder Madman because their heads had gotten used to such penetrating wounds. Indeed, this world was full of wonders. As Duan Yun searched, his expression grew gloomier, as these Thunder listening fellows were poor. Aside from the red clothes and some dark gold metal pieces, he didn't have a copper coin on him. Don't you all pay for your meals? In fact, this group of people really did dine without paying. Their marker being the iron flute embedded in their skulls, few dared to charge them. The madmen from the Thunder God and Mother sect are considered among the most troublemaking people in the martial world, and the entire sect is awfully mysterious and fearsome. Even the renowned heroes Hua Wen and Hua Wu would only act when left with no other choice, which is why Duan Yun casually killing these madmen from Thunder God and Mother sect was an extreme cause for them. Seeing that taking their heads wasn't going well, Duan Yun thought of pulling off the iron flutes, Being metal, they might fetch some money. However, after tugging a few times, it seemed as though they were embedded into the skulls, unable to be pulled out. Just then, Huawun approached and said, "Young hero, you're not thinking of collecting these iron flutes, are you?" Duan Yun nodded and replied, "Senior, is that inappropriate?" Huawun shook his head and said, "Young hero, although you are highly skilled, I still advise you not to do this. The Thunder God and Mother sect is enigmatic. Possessing these items might bring disaster upon you." Heeding the advice, Duan Yun stopped trying to pull the flutes out, quickly expressing his gratitude with, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." These two middle-aged uncles had kindly warned him before, and now even provided professional advice. Coupled with their unmistakably heroic demeanor, Duan Yun grew quite fond of them. By then, Hua Wu had already piled up the corpses, saying boldly, "If you ask me, just burn them all. There's no one else here to see, and the madmen of Thunder God and Mother sect who seek revenge won't find their way here. And if someone comes, we'll deal with them then." At that moment, Hua Wu's heroic spirit was even more evident, improving Duan Yun's impression of him. Little did he know, this was a significant meeting between big medicine and medicine cultivators. With the guidance of seniors, everything became much easier. Before long, the pile of corpses was set aflame. The caravan people had already returned, their gazes towards Duan Yun and the others filled with awe. Some even thought of leaving with their goods, not wanting to get involved, yet didn't quite dare. Duan Yun quickly struck up a conversation with Hua Wen and Hua Wu. In Duan Yun's eyes, these two uncles were forthright, humorous, knowledgeable, and truly exemplary heroes. It was also from Hua Wen and Hua Wu that Duan Yun learned about the origins of the Thunder God and Mother sect. The Thunder God and Mother sect is a deeply mysterious and sinister sect within the martial world, faithfully venerating the celestial Thunder God and Mother. The members of this sect create numerous holes in their skulls to insert small flutes made of black secret iron. They do this to listen to thunder. They believe that the celestial Thunder God and Mother will transmit divine skills during thunderstorms. It's said that within the sect, many have indeed suddenly gained insight while listening to thunder, mastering powerful thunder skills. The madman resembling a skinny monkey was probably one who had gained such insight, hence his sudden frenzy that caused harm. As for the dark gold metal pieces collected from the corpses, it's said that they are divine iron dropped during thunderstorms, referred to as Mother's Divine Iron by the sect, bearing the staggering secrets and supreme cultivation techniques of the Thunder God and Mother. Hearing this, Duan Yun puzzledly asked, "So, divine iron really falls from the sky?" Hua Wen nodded. "These madmen have always chased the sound of thunder, and it's true that occasionally celestial exotic iron descends. I was fortunate to see it once, even mistook it for golden leaves falling from the sky." Duan Yun took out a metal piece, indeed finding it somewhat resembling a golden leaf. He couldn't help but examine it against the firelight, discovering some symbols and text that were difficult to understand. Was this really something that fell from the sky? At this moment, his worldview crumbled a bit more. Is this really the world of martial arts? Chapter 22. Am I the only one who achieved it? Hua Wen saw Duan Yun studying the metal shard and couldn't help but warn him, "Mr. Duan, you must absolutely not rashly attempt to practice what's written on it, as they can easily drive a person insane." Ah? The reason why thunder listening is known as a madman is precisely because he often listens to thunder and observes divine iron while practicing, which drives him mad. Those are cultivation techniques they themselves can't endure, and it would undoubtedly be even more perilous for outsiders like us to practice. Hearing this, Duan Yun seriously wrapped the two divine iron of our mothers in cloth and expressed his gratitude. "Thank you very much, Brother One, for the advice. Without you all, I really wouldn't have known these things." Unable to restrain himself, Hua Wen burst out laughing heartily. "Mr. Duan, you are skilled and courageous. I was just nagging unnecessarily. But come to think of it, when my brother and I first entered the martial world, we were just as clueless and were quite frightened by these freaks. Especially my brother. He wasn't out for more than 10 days when he fell for a lady. He shamelessly declared his affection to her, only to find out in the room that she was actually a he and nearly got beaten up. Damn, bro, you just blurt out stuff like that? As they talked, Hua Wen and Hua Wu started recalling amusing stories from the martial world. Of course, they were telling true stories. They never hesitated to share these stories with each other, now that they had the opportunity to communicate with their cultivated big medicine. After all, they were the generous Lingshui twin heroes. What's more, they were looking forward to the big medicine's reaction when he finally learned the truth. Listening to them generously sharing amusing stories, Duan Yun felt relaxed and at ease. Later on, he even started drinking with the two brothers by the bonfire, feeling a burst of high spirits. Being out and about, unexpectedly making good friends in the martial world, killing villains, and then talking and laughing over drinks together. This is exactly the martial world he had imagined. Duan Yun was not without his guards up. The wine he drank was all his own. However, in the eyes of Hua Wen and Hua Wu, this was a joke. Amongst the big medicine they had encountered, what kind of personalities had they not seen? The next day, the two parties set off together, both heading for the nearby Yunxiang city. Hua Wen mentioned they had old friends there and invited Duan Yun to join them for meat and drinks. Duan Yun thought since he was free anyway, and these were his first friends made in the martial world and they got along well, he didn't refuse. As someone in the martial world cherishing love and hatred, it naturally was better to have more friends. In his eyes, except for the sister duo of goddess catchers, they were probably the second pair of righteous people he had encountered. Mainly because Hua Wen and Hua Wu, these two middle-aged uncles, indeed exuded a heroic demeanor in their every move, making others feel invigorated as if bathed in the spring breeze. It reminded him of characters like Gai Nye from the animations of his previous life. Along the way, Hua Wen and Hua Wu exchanged a glance, a smug look peeking through their eyes. The more they interacted with this big medicine, the more certain they became that Duan Yun was a greenhorn, utterly clueless about what the martial world really was. As long as they behaved themselves, such greenhorns would definitely open their hearts to them. After all, they were true heroes. In less than an hour, they arrived at Yunxiang City. Yunxiang City, like Lishui City, was a small town, but it was busier than Lishui City due to the numerous merchants passing through. Hua Wen and Hua Wu soon brought Duan Yun to an elegant small courtyard in the city. Just after entering, a scholar-dressed man suddenly knelt on the ground, his eyes rimmed with redness. I never expected to see my two life-saving benefactors again. Hua Wen and Hua Wu quickly helped him up, saying they were just passing by and happened to visit an old friend. After some conversation, Duan Yun learned that this scholar was named Zhang Tailan, once a student of an academy. He had a younger brother named Zhang Taihong, with whom he had a very close relationship. Years ago, they were the academy's most proud students, often rolling up their sleeves to reason with others. Duan Yun could tell something about Zhang Tailan's physical capabilities from the sinewy muscles he possessed. But who would have thought that after a disaster, their academy would disintegrate, forcing the brothers to wander the martial world, only to run into bad luck and encounter the Red Building Fairy. The Red Building Fairy coveted the sturdy bodies of the two brothers. They were no match and were captured. Duan Yun hadn't expected to encounter victims of the Red Building Fairy here. Just how many innocent men have the women from this red house debauched? My brother has been gone for 5 years now, yet I still dream of the days we studied and lifted weights together at the academy. Had it not been for you two saviors, I probably wouldn't have survived, lamented Zhang Tailan with tearful eyes. Hua Wu couldn't help but sigh regretfully. We can only blame our inadequate skills. At that time, we barely managed to save you. Zhang Tailan gritted his teeth and said, the way my brother died at their hands, I will remember it for a lifetime. It's a pity that with my meager skills, I can only secretly oppose them, unable to truly avenge and wipe out the hatred. It's rumored that those two mad women from the Red House have already become elders. Hua Wen also said with an ugly expression, those evil women from the Red House are truly detestable, wrecking the lives of countless good men. After encountering such scum again, I've never held back. Zhang Tailan wiped his reddened eyes and said, meeting two righteous benefactors who lent a helping hand. My life as Zhang Tailan is worth it. Enough said. I'll drink a pot to the two benefactors. Saying so, he picked up a pot of wine and chugged it down. Hua Wen and Hua Wu also picked up their wine pots to drink together, as if to drown all their grievances. Duan Yun watched and felt a wave of emotion and shared enmity, because this was a display of true sincerity, without a trace of falsehood. Hua Wen and Hua Wu, medicine cultivators, regarded human life as mere grass, yet they had earned the title of heroes and had indeed performed many righteous deeds. Back then, they risked defending the ferry of the Red House to save Zhang Tailan, and were rightfully his life-saving benefactors. In this predatory martial world, where everyone consumed others for strength, the nature and preferences of the strong varied. Some consumed others to become stronger just so they could consume more effectively, while others did so to indulge in more murder and debauchery. Hua Wen and Hua Wu consumed others to become heroes. Being a hero and saving people, receiving their gratitude seemed as exhilarating as consuming big medicine. Suddenly, Duan Yun found that the distance between him and his three new acquaintances had lessened, because they had a common enemy, the Fairy of the Red House. The matter with Zhang Tailan and his brother further solidified Duan Yun's determination to wipe out the Fairy of the Red House. As they continued to chat, the three of them toasted Duan Yun once again. Brother Duan, last night you used the finger sword to kill 5 of those destructive thunder-crazed followers in a row, demonstrating astonishing martial skill. If my brother had that ability back then, he might not have failed to save Brother Taihong. At this point, Duan Yun could no longer hold back and confessed, without hiding it from you three, I too wish to slaughter those mad women from the Red House. Afterward, he recounted his experience of almost being violated by the evil women of the Red House that night. Hearing that Duan Yun also held a grudge against the Fairy of the Red House, the four drank even more freely. Sharing a common enemy, if not friends, they were almost like friends. Especially Zhang Tailan, who could not help but let the tears of a strong man fall once more, saying that when he saw Duan Yun's valiant spirit, he was reminded of his late younger brother. As they drank more and more, Hua Wu couldn't help but take the opportunity to ask, "May I inquire about Brother Duan's mentor? Your finger sword last night was truly impressive, and it seemed very familiar to me." Duan Yun responded, "I'm not afraid of being mocked. I just picked up a secret book and fumbled around with it." Duan Yun spoke the truth, but to Zhang Tailan, it seemed like a humble brag, considering that such a young and talented individual was often a heavenly pride of a great family or sect. In fact, Duan Yun also knew that the truth was sometimes more bewildering to people. Only the two medicine cultivators, Hua Wen and Hua Wu, guessed that this might actually be the truth, and they couldn't help but feel excited on the inside. This big medicine must have stumbled on great fortune and mistakenly cultivated a divine skill. Contemplating, Hua Wen said, "Don't laugh at me, Brother Duan. But actually last night I wanted to say that your finger sword closely resembles a cultivation technique our brothers once practiced called the Jade Sword True Understanding." Duan Yun expressed his surprise. "You've practiced the Jade Sword True Understanding?" Hua Wen and Hua Wu both laughed heartily, with Hua Wen saying, "Of course we've practiced it." The secret book had circulated in the martial world, claiming to be able to instantly cultivate sword chi and true chi, a divine skill. Back then, those who practiced this technique numbered at least 800, if not 1,000, and our brothers couldn't resist buying a copy. "And then?" Duan Yun curiously asked. "Then? Of course, it turned out to be crap. We didn't cultivate a shred of Jade Sword True Chi, nor any Sword Chi within a month. We were ecstatic, but the True Chi and Sword Chi we cultivated couldn't even kill a mosquito. My brother persisted for another half-year and still cultivated nothing. It became a joke. Did anyone succeed?" Duan Yun couldn't help asking. He had suspected that this secret book was a common commodity, considering it was sold so cheaply, but he hadn't expected it to be so ordinary. The Jade Sword True Understanding he possessed must have been secondhand at least, if not passed down multiple times. Succeed? With my 1 in 10,000 talent for cultivation, I had no results after half a year. How could anyone succeed? Hundreds, if not 1,000, practiced the swordsmanship, and some practiced for many years, growing old without any news of success. Later on, the jade sword true understanding naturally lost its credibility, and the people of the martial world considered it a joke by some deranged expert. I was the one who suffered from seeking a shortcut and wasted all that hard work, grumbled Hua Wu. Duan Yun blinked in surprise. What, no one had succeeded? Why did I succeed then? The proof is in the pudding. Indeed, I am a 1 in a million sword Dao prodigy. Chapter 23. The first transmission of martial arts. The drinking had become haphazard, and in the end, Duan Yun used breaking body sword energy to force some of the alcohol out of his system, barely managing to stay sober. Zhang Tailan, who had been drinking fiercely and crying bitterly, was already deep in drunken oblivion. Duan Yun thought of Zhang Tailan's despair as he watched his brother get violated to death, thought of the Lingshui twin heroes' helplessness, as they couldn't save anyone due to the Red House madwoman's exquisite movement technique, and his usually forgiving heart reignited with anger from nearly experiencing the same violation. Before leaving Lishui City, he already had the budding desire of eradicating the filth and spreading martial justice across the land. He wanted to pass on the Jade Sword True Understanding, a secret manual that had changed his life to benefit more people. But he knew this cultivation technique couldn't be passed on carelessly. At minimum, it had to be shared with people as upright and just as himself. Otherwise, it would bring disaster to the world. Now, it seemed like he had found a target for passing on his skills. After interacting with the middle-aged heroes Hua Wan and Hua Wu, he confirmed that his improved Jade Sword True Understanding would somewhat counter the Red House Fairy. That year, they could only rescue one person because their skills were no match for the Red House Fairy's ghostly movement, as Zhang Tailan's brother was violated to death right before their eyes. But what if they could learn his improved Jade Sword True Understanding? The Red House wasn't just the Xuanxiong gang. It was a mysterious and terrifying major sect, with evil women committing atrocities without restraint, violating men all over the world. Killing them all by himself would not be easy. Joining forces with 2 individuals as just as him, or even more, the Lingshui twin heroes, in eradicating these evil women would be wonderful. Not only could he benefit the world by sharing martial skills, but he could also unite capable friends to eliminate the enemy, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Having drunk a bit too much himself, Duan Yun hesitated no more and took out his Jade Sword True Understanding, saying to the slightly tipsy Hua Wan and Hua Wu, "I'll be straight with you, brothers. I practiced the Jade Sword True Understanding as well, and I have mastered it. The power of the sword chi I used to practice wasn't great, but after I perfected the secret book, the sword chi turned out quite formidable." The sight of the manual instantly sobered up Hua Wan and Hua Wu. Or better said, they have the constitution of boisterous heroes who don't easily get drunk. They had been slightly tipsy all along, pondering if they could pry some words out of the drunken Duan Yun. This turned out to be a direct revelation. Happiness came too suddenly, causing both to be stunned momentarily. Hua Wu said, "Mr. Duan, are you joking? How could the eradication of those Red House mad women be a joke?" Duan Yun retorted. So Hua Wu, outwardly calm but inwardly excited, picked up the old, oil-stained Jade Sword True Understanding. Upon turning to the first page of annotations, they knew it was the Great Medicine Skills secret manual their trusted servant had spread, because the annotations were in his own handwriting. Seeing the oil stains, Hua Wu couldn't help but become a bit irritated at the servant's inefficiency. But soon, the brothers were attracted by Duan Yun's new annotations. Shinju Yangshi, Xiabai, hand 3 miles. The oil-stained meridian map in the manual was marked with a newly twisted meridian map by Duan Yun. The handwriting of these annotations was ugly. Hua Wu couldn't help murmuring inwardly. However, that wasn't the priority. The key was that this new meridian map deviated somewhat from the original. The sequence of the meridian circuits was wrong. The original went from Xiabai to Shinju and then to Yangshi, but his went from Shinju to Yangshi, then to Xiabai, and the mentions of Wind Mansion and Han 3 Miles were additional places that should not be passed through at all. Could it be that these mistakes led to the formidable sword chi of the great medicine? Hua Wan and Hua Wu restrained their excitement and continued reading until they reached Breathing Moonlight, which puzzled them. What did this have to do with moonlight? Could moonlight be breathed in and out? As for the later part about the Jade Sword Immortal Dharma image controlling the body and skin, it was like a book from heaven, completely incomprehensible. Dharma image is meant to remain pure and original, isn't it? So why alter it and put on clothes? Hua Wen took a deep breath and humbly inquired, Mr. Duan, what exactly do you mean by absorbing moonlight? Duan Yun knew it might be difficult for others to understand the thought process of someone like him, who's from a different world. So he suggested, 1. Why don't you copy it down first? As you transcribe, I'll explain. That would be perfect. Thus, Hua Wu quickly ground the ink and started transcribing the secret book, while Duan Yun provided them with accessible clarifications. Having been veterans of the martial world, Hua Wan and Hua Wu had delved into the Jade Sword true understanding for some time and gradually began to grasp Duan Yun's ideas. The words they had previously exchanged with Duan Yun were half-truths and half-lies. At that time, the Jade Sword true understanding had indeed swept through Yun's state for a while, even spreading to Lizhou. Hua Wu also jumped on the bandwagon and started cultivating it, spending a hefty sum of money to acquire the secret book. One day, a weird old woman with a floral cloth wrapped around her head suddenly showed up and ambushed Hua Wu, claiming she would boil him for soup. Despite her old age, she hadn't expected there to be a Hua Wen who looked exactly the same, and she was taken down by a surprise attack. After the ruthless interrogation by the two brothers, they obtained the other half of the Jade Sword true understanding. Only then did Hua Wan and Hua Wu realize that what they had was a miraculous great medicine skill. For a while, the brothers felt like they had stumbled upon a treasure, and this led them to become medicine cultivators. As for the origin of this cultivation technique, it was hard to trace back, as they had tortured the old woman to death. At this moment, while listening to Duan Yun's explanation, Hua Wan and Hua Wu were overwhelmed with excitement, even more so than when they had initially obtained the other half of the Jade Sword true understanding. Such a rookie was blessed with foolish luck, stumbling upon a completely different path by accident. This is the secret of great medicine that could bite back. After passing on the martial arts, Duan Yun only felt tired. He deeply realized that passing on martial arts was no easy task. After all, not everyone was like him, a one-in-a-million prodigy of the sword Tao who could grasp concepts without need for detailed explanation. Even for renowned fighters like Hua Wan and Hua Wu, who had previously practiced Jade Sword true understanding, it took a great deal of effort to help them understand his insights. This reminded Duan Yun of the class representative who tutored him in mathematics in his previous life. Her gentleness and patience truly were not easy. Not to mention the class representative himself, even he used to lose his temper for not understanding, and if it weren't for her being a gentle beauty, he would have given up learning long ago. Through this, he also truly understood the painstaking effort of that beautiful class representative. Sadly, after so long, he could no longer remember her lovely face. Although the task was tough, Duan Yun was happy, as it was meaningful. Thinking of adding two sword chi-wielding heroes to the brutal martial world, bringing some change to the scene, filled Duan Yun's heart with motivation. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Duan Yun had intended to set off in the afternoon, but could not resist the pleas from Zhang Tailan and Hua Wan and Hua Wu to stay another night. That night, Hua Wan and Hua Wu could hardly wait, practicing under the moon. They racked their brains to feel the so-called moonlight that Duan Yun mentioned, and finally grasped it in the dead of night. Hua Wu, feeling the moonlight entering his body, couldn't help but send a message to his brother. Big brother, we've got the secret. Should we hurry and brew the medicine? This kid is really nice. Let's not torture him. Just let him off easy. Yes, the secret book must not be leaked. If the swordsmanship were to be practiced by many more, then in the cutthroat martial world, all their efforts would be in vain. It's a shame this rookie is such a blabbermouth. The brothers had stumbled upon an incredible advantage. Yet they blamed Duan Yun for revealing his secrets too easily. Hua Wu stopped that thought and replied, "We've only just started with this cultivation technique. In case there are parts we don't fully understand, we'll need this kid. Let's focus on our practice. The moment you and I master it, that's when this kid will be turned into a medicinal soup." For a moment, Hua Wan and Hua Wu's eyes were filled with a glow that was both fiery and icy cold. Chapter 24. Walking Corpse on a Rainy Night. Truly, good fortune makes the spirit soar. Duan Yun had only been in the martial world for a few days and not only made 3 friends in Zhang Tailan, Hua Wan and Hua Wu, but also succeeded in passing on martial arts for the first time, planting 2 seeds of goodwill in this world fraught with murder and deceit. By morning, even the limping donkey wasn't limping anymore, jumping around happily in front of Duan Yun with a donkey-faced grin. This time, Duan Yun was really hitting the road again. This was just a stopover for him, and after 2 days of feasting on fish, meat, and jar-blowing liquor, he felt he was about to eat Zhang Tailan out of house and home. He had to leave, and though Zhang Tailan was reluctant to see him go, Hua Wan and Hua Wu were immersed in their cultivation, aware they could easily find Mr. Duan, the big medicine, again, so they didn't insist on him staying. "Mr. Duan really is a young hero?" Zhang Tailan sighed as he watched the figure of Duan Yun riding away on his donkey. "Yes, he's incredibly kind," Hua Wu echoed sadly. "Go ahead and hop about. Such a big medicine is rare. It won't be long before it turns to juice. It's quite a pity, really." Hua Wan and Hua Wu looked at each other, an unspoken understanding between them. Life's journey is long like a lingering dream. On the road, we encounter wind frost, fierce and keen. In this tumultuous world, the dream's path is seen. New to the martial world, Duan Yun had grown accustomed to long travels and to spending nights in the wilderness. Sometimes, he even chose to sleep in the wild on purpose, believing that facing crises in nature kept one's body and mind from slackening, which was beneficial for cultivation. Of course, that was the ostensible reason. The real reason was to save the money it would cost to stay at an inn. After gorging on food and wine with Hua Wan and Hua Wu, Duan Yun found himself fond of drinking. In his previous life, he didn't care for alcohol, usually sticking to what he'd jokingly call chubby nerd's joy drinks. Unexpectedly, after indulging in drink on this world a couple of times, he felt it was even better than his previous life's chubby nerd's joy. And so, with his limited silver, he felt it was more cost-effective to spend on drink than on inns. Now, Duan Yun, riding on Little Gray, couldn't help but hum this song while looking at the boundless wild grass and forests beside the road. During these days on the road, his biggest feeling was one of desolation, and there were an awful lot of graves. Some nights, out in the wild, he inevitably encountered marked and unmarked graves. Some poor souls in the ground didn't even have their blankets properly covered. He often saw exposed bones. Such scenes often gave Duan Yun the illusion that he had entered the world of a Chinese ghost story. He had journeyed thousands of miles away from Wangchun City, and despite all the traveling, still had not seen a hint of bustling scenery. Today's weather was gloomy. Thick clouds weighed heavily in the sky. Oppressive. Duan Yun took a sip of wine and wondered, "It's not going to rain, is it?" No sooner had the words left his mouth than a raindrop splattered onto his forehead. "Well, at least it doesn't seem like a heavy rain," Duan Yun couldn't help remarking, just as a sudden downpour began to fall. "Damn it!" Instantly, Duan Yun was lambasted head to toe by the rain, cursing under his breath. He was no stranger to rain while traveling, and typically he would just tough it out. But this rain was different. It was freezing rain. The droplets felt like they would freeze upon contact, chilling to the bone. Duan Yun was all right with his true chi as a shield, but the donkey couldn't take it. The donkey's breath turned white, and its normally rugged body began to tremble quickly. Duan Yun gritted his teeth and lifted the donkey. Thus, on the muddy path, there appeared the silhouette of a gynecologist doctor carrying a donkey and running. At that moment, Duan Yun felt even more awkward than Ning Kaichen caught in the rain while carrying a donkey, as if he had met a ghostly downpour himself. The freezing rain was fierce, even pelting Duan Yun with chunks of ice. He knew he must find shelter from the rain. Otherwise, he'd have no choice but to have roasted donkey meat. Duan Yun's footsteps quickened. More shrubbery appeared on both sides of the road ahead, swaying ghostly shapes in the stormy wind as it blew. At that moment, Duan Yun's eyes suddenly lit up. Amid the pouring rain and icy fog, he saw a slanted path leading upward to a higher place where the outline of a building loomed. At last, he had found a place to shelter from the rain. Duan Yun carried the donkey up the slope and discovered an abandoned Taoist temple at the top of the hill. The red walls were mottled, covered in green moss, looking like the face of a person with skin disease in the rain. Thank goodness it's a Taoist temple, not a monastery, or else the déjà vu would be too strong, Mr. Duan muttered, already regretting singing that song. Seeing that the donkey was almost stiff with cold, Mr. Duan no longer hesitated and carried it straight into the Taoist temple. Having often slept by graves these days, he wasn't scared anymore. Mr. Duan headed straight for the main hall of the temple, as many of the houses had collapsed, leaving only that area offering some shelter from the rain. Only when he got under the dilapidated eaves did he set the donkey down. By that time, he couldn't help but shiver with cold. The rain was just too freezing, and the donkey, with its body stiff, shook off the rainwater. After entering the main hall, there were some wooden frames from doors and windows scattered on the ground. Mr. Duan chose a few relatively dry ones, found a place where the tiles were relatively intact, and started making a fire. In the middle of it, he took a big gulp from his gourd, feeling his body gradually warming up. Seeing that the donkey was still stiff with cold, he also poured a little for it. After drinking that small sip of alcohol, along with the fire slowly building up, the donkey's condition gradually stabilized. Mr. Duan exhaled a breath of air and remarked, "No need for roasted donkey, at least for now." The sky was getting darker and darker. Though it was only afternoon, it felt like nightfall. The sound of hail hitting the roof came occasionally, as if eggs were rolling around on it. The freezing rain brought in a cold fog, making this dilapidated Taoist temple seem mysterious and eerie. From here, one could see a large old tree in the courtyard. On the old tree were vaguely visible faded red cloths, and under the tree roots, there were dense traces of incense sticks and candle wax, probably left by worshippers making offerings in the past. One could imagine the heyday of this temple. Compared to that time, now even the deity statue in the main hall was only half remaining, unrecognizable as to which deity it was, and it looked ghostly and sinister. This eeriness, so different from that by the graves, seemed even deeper and more oppressive. However, being able to find such a place to stay in this ghostly weather was no easy feat. He didn't believe his luck could be that good to encounter a ghost. Especially after drinking the alcohol, Mr. Duan's young hero spirit rose up, with no trace of fear left. Even if there were ghosts in this world, he was determined to become a character like Yen Qixia, and possibly even take up a side job as a doctor.
Hod hod hod.
Mr. Duan took another big swig of alcohol, then got into the jade sword stance. At any time, one must not forget to train in martial arts. At this moment, the cold fog was blown in with the wind, and the fire, which was not burning strongly, became flickering and unsteady. Mr. Duan made a quick decision, extended his sword finger, and poked forward. A white sword chi struck the fire at the moment it landed, and the flames roared into vigor. Little Gray had already become accustomed to his technique, since he added alcohol to the sword chi. Mr. Duan loved drinking not only because the alcohol brought him joy similar to a happy water for homebodies, but also because the shooting feeling was quite nice. Yes, these past days he had gotten used to shooting alcohol from his fingertips. The alcohol mixed with his sword chi, adding an explosive touch to it. Now, his sword chi could not only easily penetrate someone's body, but also serve to disinfect their wounds with alcohol, and even light a fire. The fire was stable now, yet the freezing rain showed no sign of stopping. Mr. Duan knew that he would probably have to spend the night here. Just as he was preparing to fix some dry food to eat, suddenly, a bell rang through the rain and fog. In this dilapidated Taoist temple, Within the enveloping rain and fog, the bell's sound seemed to naturally carry a mysterious and eerie aura, instilling fear. Mr. Duan looked out from the entrance and realized that some people really did come to the temple. Procession. These people wore tight white veils covering their upper bodies, not even exposing their eyes, and placed their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them, following the bell sound while moving forward. Mr. Duan noticed that they emitted no living human aura. Their footsteps were silent, and even their steps were uniform. These were clearly walking corpses. Rainy weather, an abandoned Taoist temple, mysterious bell sound, walking corpses. Mr. Duan's scalp tingled a bit. Oh my, did I actually encounter a real ghost? He saw that this procession of corpses didn't stop at all. Through the veil of rain, they headed straight for the main hall where he was. Chapter 25, Growing Impatient. The corpses lined up and made their way straight into this great hall. Duan Yun stood by the fire, sword fingers at the ready, concentrating on guarding. The gray donkey intelligently backed up a few steps, shielding Duan Yun in front of itself. Having spent a night outdoors on the outskirts of the city, encountering the Red Building Fairy, Goddess Catcher, and Thunder Listening's Mad Thunderer, Duan Yun thought himself worldly. Yet he didn't expect this land to still surprise him with new tricks. Accompanied by the faint sound of bells, on a rainy day, such a line of corpses appeared in an abandoned Taoist temple. Even someone as skilled and brave as Duan Yun couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. The walking corpses with covered heads arrived at the great hall and stood in a neat row. The next moment, one of them stepped forward. With a swish, a rope flew out unexpectedly and hung between two broken pillars of the great hall. Then, that walking corpse pulled off its rain-soaked head covering and started ringing a bell. As the hushed sound of the bronze bell rang out, the line of walking corpses turned their gaze unexpectedly towards Duan Yun. Feeling hair-raisingly stared at, Duan Yun was considering taking the initiative to strike, wondering whether to aim for the head or feet. But then, the group of walking corpses suddenly leapt up, hooked their feet, and ended up hanging upside down from the rope. The bell-ringing walking corpse then tied a couple more rounds of rope around their ankles. So at a glance, the group of corpses was hanging in the great hall like cured meat. By this time, Duan Yun was sure that the bell-ringing walking corpse was a living person. Under the reflection of the firelight, not only did this person have a shadow, but also moved with the liveliness of a living being. The person came over and performed a courteous gesture. "My name is Huang Shi, a corpse chaser. The rain caught me unprepared and has disturbed you. Please excuse my intrusion." Duan Yun raised an eyebrow. "Corpse chasing?" the newcomer said with a smile. "Seeing that you're young, you must be new to the martial world. The Huang family of Yuanling has a long history in corpse chasing. Out of the countless corpses driven in this world, half were probably chased by the Huang family." Speaking of his family's prestigious corpse chasing experience, the man seemed quite proud. Duan Yun clasped his hands together and said, "I see. It's my limited knowledge that startled. Please don't take offense, Senior Huang." He recalled the corpse chasers in Shaanxi from novels in his past life and found that some aspects were similar, but there were also significant differences. At least, these corpses were not hopping around and did not look like the rigid zombies. And these corpses hanging upside down on a rope, like pieces of cured meat, were something not even described in the novels. Although the great hall was large, there was only so much shelter from the rain. After being occupied by the hanging corpses, it meant that the corpse chaser couldn't stay far from Duan Yun. Shivering as he brushed droplets of water off his body, he muttered about "this damned weather," seemingly looking to share the warmth of the fire. At that moment, Huang Shi took out a small bag of soybeans, chewing on them as he offered, "Want some?" Duan Yun declined. "I've already eaten." Huang Shi wasn't pushy and just started snacking on the beans, saying, "Being cautious as you enter the martial world is good. Believe it or not, I'm a good person." Duan Yun responded, "Senior must be jesting. I simply don't like soybeans." Huang Shi looked surprised. "You haven't had Yuanling's soybeans then? They're delicious." Duan Yun answered truthfully, "I'm afraid they might make me fart." Huang Shi burst into hearty laughter, saying, "Young man, you're quite amusing. But let me tell you, I don't fart after eating soybeans." Huang Shi had sparse hair and gray-white beard, and his features were sharp, overall not very pleasant to look at. However, through the conversation, Duan Yun found him quite amiable. Unable to resist, he asked, "Senior, is there a special reason for having these corpses hanging up?" Chewing on his beans, Huang Shi explained, "The night air is heavy with yin energy, especially in areas like this. But with the corpses' feet off the ground, they are cut off from the earth's energy. Plus, with Chenquin inversion, it reduces the odds of a corpse transforming." "Corpse transformation? Can corpses really transform?" asked Duan Yun, surprised. "Of course. There's this Mr. Ren from Yuanling, who transformed into a corpse king after his death, with dark iron chains in hand, blood flowing on his body like fire, biting everyone he saw. He nearly turned an entire hamlet into walking corpses, causing trouble for 100 miles. Huang Shi casually shared this anecdote about corpse transformation with Duan Yun. "This case is quite famous in the martial world. But since you're new, it's normal you haven't heard about it. Our Huang family exerted a great effort to slay that corpse king. Otherwise, the aftermath would have been unimaginable. Even our grandmaster died there." Huang Shi spoke at length. Duan Yun couldn't help but say, "I had no idea there was so much depth to your profession. I have to say, listening to a corpse chaser tell a story about corpse transformation in front of a row of hanging corpses, during a rainy day, in a dilapidated Taoist shrine, really immerses you in the experience. And it's quite interesting." Huang Shi said with a smile, "You speak so politely, young man. Do you think I'm very old?" "I'm actually not that old. I just look mature for my age." "Really?" Duan Yun said. "Take a guess. Don't hesitate and guess how old I am this year," Huang Shi suggested. In Duan Yun's eyes, Huang Shi looked at least to be a man in his 50s. However, since the other party mentioned it, Duan Yun boldly guessed younger. 35. "Too high," Huang Shi said. 30. Duan Yun exclaimed in surprise. "Still too high. It couldn't possibly be 25, could it?" Duan Yun couldn't help but say, "Not to deceive you, in 5 more months, it will be my 20th birthday," Huang Shi answered. Duan Yun blinked his eyes, feeling a bit dry. He said, "It turns out you're even 2 months younger than me?" Huang Shi stroked his sparse gray hair and replied, "That's right. I told you I look mature for my age, so actually I should be calling you brother." Duan Yun, the person before him, was actually a peer, an astonishment that was not less than seeing the red building women, thunder-listening lunatic, and this procession of walking corpses. People in the martial world really do have their quirks. At this moment, Huang Shi pulled out a water flask and took a few gulps, then exclaimed, "Because I look so mature, no women have ever liked me much. When we played as children, they all thought I looked like their grandfather. But there was one girl who was the exception. Her name is Ling, and she never minded my older appearance. I promised her that after I earn enough money from this corpse chasing, I would marry her." As he said this, a blissful smile appeared on Huang Shi's mature face, making him seem much younger. Duan Yun couldn't help but congratulate him, saying, "Then congratulations to you, Huang. Thanks a lot. If it weren't for the distance and the rugged mountains of Yuanling, I would truly like to invite you over for the wedding feast. I have wine right here, so let's toast to Huang's happy marriage in advance." Duan Yun took out a wine gourd and poured some for Huang Shi. It must be said, ever since Duan Yun found out that they were the same age, his social anxiety disappeared and he started chatting freely. For a while, the sound of their jovial conversation echoed through the hall, dissipating much of the eerie atmosphere. At this time, Huang Shi showed a troubled look and said, "To be honest, Mr. Duan, I still feel like I'm not good enough for her." Duan Yun replied, "Love is a matter between 2 people. If Miss Ling likes you, then you are definitely worthy." Huang Shi looked somewhat worried and said, "My main fear is that I can't provide her happiness." "I'm not joking with you, Mr. Duan. but as a corpse chaser who spends all day with corpses, I always feel somewhat inadequate in that respect. As a gynecologist, Duan Yun instantly picked up on the key issue from the expression on Huang Shi's face and asked, "You're feeling weak?" Huang Shi nodded and said, "Yes, terribly weak. Even taking medicine hasn't helped." Duan Yun's spirits lifted immediately and said, "I do have a solution." He hadn't expected the opportunity to impart a technique to come so soon. Indeed, his jade sword stance was good for nourishing yin and fortifying yang, which was suitable for those who suffered from excessive weakness, such as this corpse chaser brother, Huang. Compared to imparting the entire power of the jade sword true understanding, the potential impacts of bestowing the secret of this nourishing yin and fortifying yang posture were far less concerning for Duan Yun. After all, this was within the scope of medical skills. Out of 10 doctors, 7 or 8 claimed they could strengthen yang. His sword stance was just particularly effective. It could be said to embody the medical practitioner's compassionate heart. Although he typically would charge for this service, today he would pass it on to Huang, whose appearance was overly mature, and hope it would bring happiness to his marriage. Huang Shi didn't hold much hope, but still politely said, "Really?" Duan Yun was confident and said, "Just try and see. I'm no quack, you know." Huang Shi was surprised and asked, "Mr. Duan, you are actually a doctor?" "Of course, the real deal, a hereditary doctor," Duan Yun replied, casually omitting the word gynecologist. A gynecologist is still a doctor after all. Chapter 26 Why Do We Squat to Pee? The strengthening yang stance of the jade sword stance. Duan Yun had already confirmed its effects early on. He never would breathe air, just breathing moonlight, and the next day he would surely be energetic all morning, requiring several cold showers to barely suppress it. That is to say, it's crucial to absorb the moonlight in the deep and shallow method, and it doesn't involve the jade sword true chi at all. Initially, Duan Yun intended to use this as a method to make money as a men's health doctor, but he felt a kinship with Huang Shi and gifted it as a congratulatory gift. Huang Shi initially showed a trace of an odd emotion on his face, but soon returned to normal. Huang Shi, being able to maneuver walking corpses, evidently practiced the martial arts. When it comes to the jade sword stance, he grasped it instantly. As for absorbing moonlight like Hua Wen and Hua Wu, he somewhat couldn't understand. But Duan Yun shared the trick with him, and he noted it down, saying he would try it when there's a moon. Tonight, it seems there won't be any moon. Once again, Duan Yun sowed the seeds of kindness, feeling very pleased. 2 young men in a dilapidated Taoist temple, drinking and chatting over a pile of corpse-like cured meat, an indeed novel experience. What is the martial world? Duan Yun still didn't have a clear answer. It's probably beyond killing those who deserve to die and performing chivalrous deeds. It's about meeting many interesting people, seeing many interesting sights. The presence of a peer in this nocturnal temple somewhat relieved Duan Yun's loneliness. The next day, because they were headed different ways, Duan Yun had to leave. Huang Shi expressed that meeting is fate, and uttered those very martial world words. "Mr. Duan, the mountains remain unchanged. The rivers flow ever onwards. We shall meet again sooner or later." Duan Yun rode on a donkey on the road, feeling indeed this is what the martial world should be. He met interesting people, but it was a brief encounter. If fated, they'll meet again; if not, they will gradually fade into a little memory as one ages. After Duan Yun left, along with the ringing of the bells, the walking corpses lined up one by one as they jumped off the ground. The rain from last night had stopped, but the atmosphere was still permeated with a damp and cold mist. Visibility was not great. At this time, a female corpse quietly walked up to Huang Shi. Huang Shi saw her, his eyes softening. He lifted the white cloth covering the head of the female corpse. His gaze was tender like water, as though what he was lifting was not a cloth covering a corpse, but the bridal veil of a bride. Underneath the white cloth was the face of a young woman. If not for the stitched scars across her face, which made her look like a sewn doll, her features would be considered quite delicate. "Ling, you really have it tough." Huang Shi tenderly touched the female corpse's face and said. Ling opened her mouth, her voice muffled and unclear, but Wang Shi's expression changed drastically. Nonsense, you are still alive, you must be still alive. As long as your brain is intact, you are still alive, Wang Shi said, agitated. Speaking, his sharp nails followed a stitched scar and cut it open, revealing the inside of the woman's face. From here, one could see that a large piece of flesh under the woman's face was hollowed out. Stuffed inside were several human brains. These brains, connected by flesh-like branches, nourished the brain within the skull, gently pulsating, unspeakably horrifying and terrifying. At that moment, Wang Shi reached out and took out a gray-black brain, throwing it onto the ground. Ling, one of the brain's supporting sustenance was damaged. Why didn't you tell me? Wang Shi said anxiously. The woman opened her mouth again, as Wang Shi's expression eased and said, "Don't worry. I will find a fresh, smart brain very soon. The brain of Mr. Duan last night was good, but you wouldn't let me do it." The woman pouted and continued to speak, but Wang Shi interrupted. "What friends are not friends, Wang Shi, for you, could kill everyone. It's still not too late to catch up to him." At this moment, the woman held his hand, looking at him with the still healing, torn face. Wang Shi sighed and carefully restitched the opening. Actually, Mr. Duan is not as naive as one would imagine, casually passing on techniques that are of unknown origins. Only a fool would recklessly learn them. However, for your sake, I am still willing to give it a try, as he does seem to have a robust yang qi. The woman wanted to say something, but Wang Shi covered her mouth and said, "Ling, you should rest for now. I need to find you a fresh brain nourisher." Under the headless statue, next to the neatly arranged bodies, the man delicately sutured the cut on the woman's face. Beside the altar was a dead, gray-black human brain. In such foggy weather, it appeared mysterious and horrifying. These were scenes Duan Yun did not witness. He was still thinking that with Huang learning his stance technique, even the aged him would certainly lead a vigorous married life. Before Huang Shi tried practicing Duan Yun's strengthening yang stance, Hua Wen and Hua Wu had already achieved a certain level with Duan Yun's Jade Sword True Understanding. The two brothers said goodbye to Zhang Tailan, found a secluded place, did nothing else, and solely practiced the Jade Sword True Understanding passed down by Duan Yun. That night, Hua Wu couldn't help saying, "Brother, this youngster's Jade Sword True Qi is indeed domineering. It actually dissolved some of my original True Qi." Indeed, in the past few days, the more the two practiced, the more they marveled at the fortune and the miraculous mistake in Duan Yun's cultivation. Their big medicine True Qi had already turned from virtual to actual as they kept consuming big medicine, but when it met the True Qi mingled with moonlight, it melted away like ice and snow. Hua Wu said worriedly, "Should we continue practicing? If we keep going, our own True Qi might be completely devoured." Hua Wen pondered for a moment and said, "Let's continue. Lately, I've been feeling restless, suspecting someone is targeting us. We need to advance further for safety." Hua Wu said seriously, "All right." In fact, the brothers knew early on, once one starts practicing this medicine cultivator technique, there's no stopping, because it wasn't just the two of them who were medicine cultivators. Sometimes, they even encountered big medicine cultivated by other medicine cultivators. As long as they didn't recklessly consume someone else's big medicine, conflicts between medicine cultivators were generally not severe. However, with many martial artists being foolish and competition among medicine cultivators, there were occasional incidents of medicine cultivators attacking each other. It can be said that from the moment they started cultivating medicine, they, like the big medicine, were also in the game. Big medicine allowed them to harvest, but they could also become targets for some madmen to harvest, which was why the two brothers never stopped cultivating medicine. Some environments forced you to keep moving forward. For safety, Hua Wen and Hua Wu had actually distanced themselves from other medicine cultivators, purposely coming to remote areas like Lishui City to cultivate medicine. However, they still discovered the traces of other medicine cultivators even after so many days. Once there was competition, there was no stopping. That was also why the brothers were in a hurry to cultivate and harvest medicine. But Duan Yun's brand new, Jade's sword True Understanding provided them with new possibilities. Possibilities to break out of this situation. Their long-cultivated Jade Sword True Chi, which was supplemented and solidified over the years, was no match for the Moonlight True Energy they had been cultivating for less than 10 days, which showed the strength of the Jade Sword True Chi integrated with Moonlight. Although cultivating and harvesting medicine had its pleasures, it was laborious and worrying due to the possibility of being harvested by peers. As long as they mastered the Moonlight True Energy, they need not worry about competitors. Thus, the two brothers redoubled their efforts and continued their fervent practice. At dawn, Hua Wen and Hua Wu went to the latrines together. Both arrived at their respective stalls and squatted down. Hua Wu couldn't help saying, "Brother, have you noticed that we've been going to the latrine more frequently lately?" Hua Wen thought for a moment and said, "It is a bit frequent, but it might just be a reaction of mutual attrition between the two streams of true Qi." Hua Wu found this to be sensible and pulled up his pants. To be honest, recently practicing Jade Sword True Understanding so intensely had given him a sensation akin to sleepwalking. At this moment, Hua Wen also stood up. The two brothers looked at each other, their minds once again occupied with thoughts of cultivation. However, just then, Hua Wu suddenly realized something and said, "Bro, you didn't defecate? Right? You defecated so quickly?" Hua Wu said gravely, "Then brother, why are we squatting to urinate?" This startled realization sent a chilling shock through Hua Wen, who said, "Right. When did we big men start squatting to urinate?" Chapter 27. Henceforth, the Lingshui twin heroes no longer exist in this world. Regarding squatting to pee, Hua Wu couldn't help but suspect, could it be a rejection reaction? Possibly. Hua Wen responded, "Brother, should we continue to train?" Hua Wu was actually a bit panicked about this change. Now thinking back, in the past 10 days, not only did they urinate more frequently and squat to urinate, but they also lost their desire. Considering the brothers were in the prime of their lives, they used to seek out women to vent their urges every month. Yet this month there was no reaction at all. He had always thought it was due to the intense focus on their martial arts training, but now he wondered if it could also be related to the cultivation technique. Another rejection reaction? Hua Wen's eyes were deep as he said, "Train." Hua Wu nodded, because at this point, there was no turning back for them. The Jade Sword True Chi they had painstakingly cultivated with great medicine had been mostly dissipated by the fusion with Moonlight True Energy. They had no choice but to continue practicing and master the stronger and more dominant Moonlight True Energy. Moreover, their current situation was not looking good. Hua Wen said they might have been targeted, and if he sensed it, it was most likely true. His perceptions were always accurate. The next day, Hua Wu got up and looked at himself in the mirror. It was still the same face full of heroic spirit, but this time Hua Wu was not as self-satisfied with it as before, instead feeling something odd. It wasn't until he saw his brother's face, which looked just like his own, that he suddenly realized something and said, "Brother, your beard." Yes, their once thick beards had become much sparser. Hua Wu touched it with his hand, and the strands of beard fell off weakly. Their complexions changed at this sight. It was a very unpleasant change. For all these years wandering the martial world, their thick and wild beards had been a hallmark of the Lingshui twin heroes. Suddenly, Hua Wen thought of something and, upon inspecting further, his face turned pale as paper. Hua Wu did the same, and shockingly exclaimed, "How did mine become so small? Brother, this can't be a rejection reaction too, right?" At this time, Hua Wu was clearly panicking. Hua Wen remained silent, not saying anything. Hua Wu paced back and forth, glancing at his privates from time to time and said, "Brother, there must be a way to save this." Hua Wen furrowed his brows. "Dr. Xue. Dr. Xue is not too far from us. Right, let's go find Dr. Xue." Charity Hall, bustling with people coming and going, and the 4 doctors in the hall were extremely busy. This medical hall was so popular, all thanks to the reputation of Divine Dr. Xue. Divine Dr. Xue was a well-known healer for many years, believed to be able to pull you back even if you were already at Ghost Gate, as long as there was still a breath left in you. But he had a flaw, and that was his high fees. With such steep prices, fewer people came to seek his help. Since his 4 apprentices could already handle things on their own and make both big and small money, he was happy to have some leisure time. However, this morning, he encountered 2 clients claiming to be old acquaintances. Looking at these 2 square-faced women who looked almost identical, Divine Dr. Shui felt they looked familiar but couldn't recall who they were. "Who may you be?" Hua Wan and Hua Wu had traveled overnight to find Divine Dr. Shui, not realizing that the transformations in their bodies had progressed even further. Hua Wu said anxiously, "Divine Dr. Shui, it's clear that benefactors forget things easily. We're the Lingshui twin heroes. How could you have forgotten our relationship with you?" Dr. Shui immediately realized and exclaimed excitedly, "You are the Hua Wu brothers." Yes, that familiar feeling from just now became clear with just that mention. "It's us," Hua Wu said excitedly. Dr. Shui wore a strange expression and asked, "Why are you dressed up in such a disguise? What are you planning to do?" "Dressed up in disguise? Not at all." The 2 of them looked in the mirror and were terribly scared. Hua Wu quickly explained the bizarre situation they found themselves in. Of course, he skipped over their experience in growing and collecting herbs and went straight to tell of their chance encounter with Duan Yun, learning his cultivation technique, and then turning into this state. "First, take off your pants," Dr. Shui said with a serious expression. Hua Wan and Hua Wu hurriedly took off their pants. This time, Dr. Shui's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, "This is shrinking yang into the belly. The real shrinking yang into the belly." Dr. Shui always got particularly excited when he saw strange and difficult diseases. Hua Wu asked anxiously, "Is there still hope for a cure?" "Give me your hand," Dr. Shui said. Hua Wu hadn't even had time to pull up his pants and gave his hand to Dr. Shui. "Amazing! Amazing! Amazing!" Holding the pulse, Dr. Shui couldn't help but repeat, "Amazing," 3 times. What a powerful and evil cultivation technique. "Is there really no hope then?" Hua Wu asked anxiously. Dr. Shui checked the pulse carefully, fell silent for a moment, and shook his head. "There's no saving you. This kind of evil cultivation technique is something I've only seen once in my lifetime. Your yin-yang has completely reversed, and your pulse is now that of a woman. It's likely beyond change. If I'm not mistaken, in at most half a month, you will completely turn into women." For a moment, the brothers' faces turned ashen. "You 2 are seasoned folks of the martial world. How could you even fall for this? The person who taught you the techniques is no simple matter." Dr. Shui sighed. Indeed, one shouldn't practice an obscure cultivation technique from the martial world, as practicing such can lead to trouble, and in some cases even become someone else's big medicine, to be exploited, a rule well understood by veteran figures of the rivers and lakes. Hua Wan and Hua Wu had been known as the Lingshui twin heroes for so many years, seen all kinds of things, and yet they were still duped, which surprised Dr. Shui. At this time, the usually silent Hua Wan couldn't help beating his chest and stamping his feet, saying, "We both got deceived by that scoundrel. We've been misled by Demon Duan." By now, both of them were certain that Duan Yun was not some naive and sweet big medicine, but a cunning old demon feigning ignorance. This old demon had disguised himself too well, plus the allure of the jade sword true understanding, had caused the 2 seasoned riverside figures to flip their boats. Indeed, old demon Duan must have been well prepared. Otherwise, would he have passed on the divine skill so readily? The more the brothers thought about it, the more it seemed to be the case. Seeing the lost birds and beards, Hua Wan and Hua Wu almost cried out loud on the spot. Before leaving, Hua Wu reminded, "Divine Dr. Shui, you must keep this matter about us brothers a secret." With a solemn face, Dr. Shui said, "Of course, this matter is no small thing. You can trust my tight-lipped nature." Hua Wu and Hua Wan gave him a doubtful glance and left. At night, Hua Wan and Hua Wu lay in bed, their eyes dull. The experiences of the past few days were like a nightmare, and they still couldn't accept this reality. Being splendid heroes already, how could they be turning into women? A grief-stricken Hua Wu said, "Brother, What should we do from now on? There's no turning back now. The Lingshui twin heroes no longer exist in this world. Hua Wen spoke with unfocused eyes. Then what are we? Hua Wu asked. Lingshui heroines. As he spoke, a line of tears slid down from Hua Wu's eyes, and sorrow overflowed like a river. Chapter 28: The Initial Fame of the Demon. Because of the incident where the Lingshui twin heroes were forced to become the Lingshui heroine, Hua Wen and Hua Wu truly harbored bone-deep hatred towards Duan Yun. Given their past temperament, they would surely have sought out Duan Yun and fought him to the death. But perhaps because they lost their manliness, they also lost their temper, and the two brothers did not dare to go. In their hearts, Duan Yun was a demon, cleverly disguised, manipulating them with a mere clap of his hands. Going to him now would be akin to delivering themselves to his door. Now, recalling Duan Yun's harmless smile and his clear, sincere eyes, they only felt horror and malevolence. How could such an evil demon exist in this world? Hua Wu clenched his teeth and said, "Brother, I hate so much. That demon Duan is truly ruthless. I always thought he was naive. I want revenge." When he spoke passionately, his voice became sharp. Hua Wen wiped away his tears and said meaningfully, "There will be an opportunity. This demon has surely toyed with more than just us two. As long as more victims emerge, we can join forces and eventually find an opportunity for revenge. Right now, I'm more worried about the medicine cultivator we talked about before. I'm afraid they might take advantage of our weakness and strike us down. So we must continue training, no matter how hard." Yes, they had no way out. If they didn't continue training in the overpowering moonlight true energy, they might end up being consumed by other medicine cultivators. Thinking of the changes within his body, Hua Wu said with a frightened face, "Brother, if we train like this, could we become big medicine for that demon Duan?" He was truly scared. Hua Wen said with a pained expression, "But we must get through this immediate crisis. For safety, we must change our identities from now on. From today onwards, I'll be called Hua Ling, and you'll be Hua Yen. I'll be your sister." Saying so, Hua Wen got up from the bed and cleaned up the remaining bits of his trembling beard. Hua Wu, tears in tow, did the same, like a wronged little wife. The brash Lingshui twin heroes were no more. Duan Yun has been out for almost a month. For someone who was a homebody in his past life, spending nearly a month on the road was like a big girl getting married for the first time. Wangchun City and Lishui City are thousands of miles apart. Though Duan Yun was not in a rush, logically, he should have arrived by now. Unfortunately, he didn't. Not only had he lost his way midway and taken detours, but he also got misdirected by bad people in the martial world. One moment someone pointing east, another moment someone else pointing west. Who could tell which was true? He didn't know. This experience of traveling made Duan Yun deeply miss the past life's high-tech maps and metro. No choice, accurate maps were too scarce in this era. Actually, taking it slow, Duan Yun could accept it. After all, he came out to experience the world and should not be too concerned about the destination. He needed to enjoy the journey. During this trip, what satisfied him most was making some friends from the martial world and teaching martial arts twice. The first martial teaching allowed the Lingshui twin heroes to advance further, helping them better perform heroic acts and destroy their common enemy, the evil woman of Red House. The second martial teaching was likely to allow the corpse chaser Huang Shi to regroup and have a happy marriage. He eventually continued to pass down the Jade Sword True Understanding, bringing better changes to this world. Especially the training he gave to Huang Shi, which did not betray his medical practitioner's compassionate heart. This gave Duan Yun a kind of spiritual fulfillment he had never obtained in his past life. But now, Duan Yun encountered something more troublesome than taking detours. His silver was running out. After treating Hua Wen and Hua Wu, two uncles' hero, to a good meal, his expenses on the road had also increased. Especially the entertainment of shooting arrows while drinking, which was not cheap. Now, at mealtime, Duan Yun did not, as before, go to a restaurant and ask the owner for good wine and good dishes. No way out, caught in a financial bind. Duan Yun could only buy 2 bread buns by the roadside to stave off his hunger. While eating the buns, he looked at his donkey, wondering whether he should sell it. As a young hero wandering the martial world, the most valuable things he had were this sword and the donkey. Young hero, you couldn't possibly sell your sword, right? After all, Wangchun City wasn't far now, and the donkey's duty was almost at an end. Yet Duan Yun was somewhat reluctant to part with it. After all, Little Gray had been quite sensible along the journey, and sitting on its back had been one of his most enjoyable ways to relax. Duan Yun pondered that he had to find a way to make some money. With his extraordinary skills, there was no reason he couldn't make money. At that moment, a group of people appeared in the street, heading determinedly in a certain direction. In barely a month's time, Duan Yun had visited more than a dozen towns and villages and was no longer unfamiliar with such occurrences. It was nothing but squabbles over territory, either shouting matches or fights, where they'd fight until their brains burst, all for a slice of profit. Once in a village, over a half-channel of water, 2 villages' farmers had fought and 2 people had died. Just then, a middle-aged man came over, loudly calling out, "Is there any chivalrous hero willing to help our Huangyu gang go and throw a punch? Work not for nothing. Lunch included." Hearing the words Huangyu gang, to be honest, Duan Yun's stomach growled with hunger. Without wine or meat today, his mouth was bland as a bird's, and he really wanted to have a good meal, but hesitated for a moment. He wasn't very keen on mingling with these gang members. Their ranks were low, their intelligence not high. Such offering of helping fists usually involved much bragging about this bro's awesomeness and that gang leader's benevolence, with those clamoring for a boxed lunch even throwing in lines that were utterly nonsensical. No matter what anyone said, he was a young hero, also a gynecologist. Following these fools would surely reduce his stature. Today is a rare occasion. Those standing at the back get enough fish and meat. Those daring to stand at the front get 2 taels of silver as a reward. If you miss this village, you won't find such a store again. As the saying goes, with generous rewards come brave warriors. Hearing about the fish, meat, and silver, quite a number of people suddenly appeared wanting to go. Duan Yun suddenly felt not sleepy at all and declared, "Count me in." Seeing people next to him trying to compete, worried about missing the chance, he quickly picked up his sword and proclaimed, "I have a sword, a true person of the martial world. I'll stand in the front. All right, you come." Thus, Duan Yun joined the cohort of the Huangyu gang with the middle-aged man. Having a sword in hand, which made him look the part, at least stronger than those unarmed, and he was after that reward of 2 taels of silver, he was quickly positioned at the forefront of the group. Duan Yun, walking in the group, could smell the fishy odor on these people. Clearly, the Huangyu gang was involved in the fish business. Their destination was also a dock. To Duan Yun's surprise, what he thought was a minor skirmish actually gathered quite a crowd as they walked. At least looking back, he couldn't see the end of it. My goodness, could 2 gangs fighting muster a crowd of thousands? Seeing the massive crowd on the other side of the dock, Duan Yun confirmed that this event was definitely not small. It reminded him of a gang war movie from his previous life. No, this was even bigger than that. Duan Yun stood at the forefront of the team, with the gang leader of the Huangyu gang not far off. With his sword in hand, yet appearing quite low-key, he momentarily stood like a mere lackey. Across him, someone from another gang, weapons in hand, surged forward with a fierce momentum, looking menacingly ready for battle. Duan Yun was momentarily speechless. Those 2 taels of silver weren't easy money at all. Chapter 29 Demon Monk. According to the rules of the martial world, whenever someone like Duan Yun, a wanderer of the martial world, is asked to assist in a fistfight, it generally won't actually come to blows. Such an imposing troop, if they really started fighting fiercely, would damage their core strength. Duan Yun stood among the Huangyu gang's troops and could distinctly feel that their morale was weaker. At that moment, the gang leader of the Huangyu gang stepped forward. He was a man dressed in black leather armor. Duan Yun couldn't understand why he insisted on wearing leather in the summer, what kind of preference that was. In any case, this man looked like he was somewhat related to aquatic creatures. His arms were covered with scale-like scabs, Duan Yun wasn't sure if it was due to practicing martial arts. He had smelled a strong fishy scent on him from early on. The other side just stood there, looking exactly like a humanoid salted fish. The gang leader of the Huangyu gang raised his voice and said, "Hong Lao, have you extended your hands too far? This West Pier has always been under our Huangyu gang's control. I have always respected you as a significant figure, minding our own waters. Yet you overstep your bounds." On the opposite side, the person called Hong Lao stepped forth. To Duan Yun's surprise, this opposing gang leader turned out to be a woman who still maintained a charming presence. The woman said with a smile, "Chan Xianyu, stop nattering like an old lady, making yourself look like you've lost your guts. After all, in Yellow Water City, it's the one with the biggest fist who has the final say. Previously, you occupied this pier because my dear brother wasn't here. Now that my dear brother is back, there's no way we'll let you reap such profits. It just doesn't make sense. Everyone knows that living by the water involves earning from the water. The protection money from the fishermen is smoothly collected, and the dock earnings are not insignificant. Being a woman, I may be petty and envious, so what of it?" Hearing all this hassle about protection money and such, Duan Yun, a terminator of unreasonable fees, felt rather annoyed momentarily. Throughout his journey, he felt that the martial world was rotten everywhere. Wherever there was a settlement, it was controlled by forces big and small. He was more than 1,000 miles away from his hometown Lishui City, yet it seemed that everywhere was just like Lishui City. Rather, after the Xuanxiong gang was wiped out, Lishui City seemed even cleaner and people lived more like humans. Outside, there were all sorts of demons and ghosts. Besides Hua Wen, Hua Wu, Zhang Tailan, Huang Shi, and a few others, he hardly met any normal folks from the martial world. Those in the martial world without a backing were just hoodlums, messing around here and there, flattering widows for favors, yet claiming themselves to be heroes of the martial world. Those with some backing belonged to these martial gangs, naturally supported by greater forces behind them, also in collusion with the authorities, all just squeezing the common folk dry. Not to mention the crazies like Thunder Madman, and the fairy from Red House who would go mad and commit murder or seduce handsome men, purely heartless and deranged. The most miserable were ordinary folks like him, with the martial gang taking a bite and the authorities another, working like oxen and horses, struggling even to have a full meal. In his previous life as a modern-day worker drone, at least there was a semblance of human form, but in this life the worker drones really weren't much different from animals. If luck was worse and one looked handsome like him, just walking could be terrifying, fearing murder. Yes, in this region, those who like that are not only the fairies in the Red House but also many men who like other men. My sister said, "Just give up one pier. Did you hear that?" At that moment, a bizarre voice sounded. The people across automatically parted, revealing the figure of a monk. He was a relatively young monk with ritual scars on his head, and his facial expression was also pious and warm, seemingly no different from a monk who endured hardships under the Buddha light in a temple. However, his actions were very unmonk-like. This was because the monk was sitting on a bamboo chair, drinking a bright red wine, next to a large piece of fresh tender beef. With each bite of beef and sip of wine, two barefooted young women were kneeling at his feet, continuously licking his toes, as if trying to keep his feet forever immaculate. What kind of monk was this? Duan Yun had never seen such a pleasure-seeking monk. Then, the young monk waved his hand, and the two toe-licking young women retreated. His impeccably clean feet stepped onto the ground as he walked forward, saying to the Huangyu gang's leader Chen Xinyu, "Do I need to repeat myself?" The monk had an eerie air about him, exerting immense pressure. Even Duan Yun, standing some distance away, could feel it, let alone the direct target, the leader of the Huangyu gang. Duan Yun wasn't worried for anyone. It was just a dog-eat-dog fight. If he had to choose a side, he relatively disliked those who didn't pay up like the Huangyu gang. At this moment, the young monk smiled, revealing his stark white teeth. Sorry. I almost forgot that you are also a gang leader. Speaking to you this way might make you lose face in front of your subordinates." While speaking, he looked toward a person beside Chen Xianyu and said, "You have practiced too, so you come." I'll let you strike thrice randomly, and after that, this poor monk would only strike back once. How about that? Not only you, but all the people here before me, each could strike me thrice, and I would only retaliate once. If today the poor monk falls first, this pier will still belong to you, along with compensating you with that street of the gambling house." As he spoke, the young monk's eyebrows lifted, giving off a peculiar and enchanting vibe. At this moment, the monk's sister, Hong Lao, came over and said with a smile, "My dear brother, stop scaring them." "Really? Such a large gang, and so many people. Is it possible that no one dares to accept this challenge?" At that time, there was a sarcastic voice from Hong Lao's side. The members of Huang Yu gang fell silent, with some gripping their weapons tightly. If a single person challenges their entire group, allowing them 3 strikes each against his one, and they still dare not accept, they truly wouldn't have the face to keep this pier. "Gang leader, let me do it." An ugly monk from who knows where, totally oblivious of the high and low. At that moment, the man previously stared at by the young monk stepped forward. One could see that his right hand was, just like the gang leader Chen Shenyu, covered with a fish scale like psoriasis. And in his hand was a fish slaughter knife. Huang Yu gang's vice gang leader, Wang He, was known for his fast hands, having once slashed from the east alley to the south alley without blinking an eye or taking a breath. Only those who had suffered his knife knew how fast and ruthless his blade was. In the Red Crane Association, countless had died under his knife, too many for 2 hands to count. Wang He stepped forward with the knife, and his entire demeanor changed, turning icy cold, looking at the young monk as if he was looking at a dead fish. "So you are saying, let you have 3 strikes before you strike back once?" Wang He asked. The young monk still wore a relaxed expression and said, "That's right. Ugh." Before he could finish speaking, a flash of chilling brightness had already slashed across his neck. This strike was very abrupt and treacherous, and also forceful, bringing with it a sharp breaking sound. The young monk's head jerked back, and a line of blood appeared on his neck, his eyes showing a hint of astonishment. The astonishment wasn't limited to him, but also included the onlookers who witnessed this scene. Such a scene gave a shock to the monk's sister, Hong Lao. However, the next moment, the astonishment in the young monk's eyes immediately turned into excitement, and he hoarsely said, "Continue. Put more effort. I can still handle it." During his speech, his wound twisted strangely, bizarrely healing itself. Wang He no longer hesitated and struck the neck with another blow. Then the 3rd strike. 3 consecutive strikes nearly landed on the same spot, with Wang He's knife strokes sharp and ruthless, attempting to decapitate the opponent. Unfortunately, the young monk didn't fall, and the wound continued twisting, his face showing a chilling smile. Seeing this smile, fast-handed Wang He's forehead and back were already covered in cold sweat. "It's my turn." The young monk spoke gently, and suddenly swung down his knife. With a swoosh, blood splattered, and Wang He's head fell to the ground. The young monk only struck back once, also at the neck, but with a radically different result. Members of Huang Yu gang were frightened and retreated, while the gang leader Chan Shenyu's face showed an expression of extreme grief. Duan Yun just felt that this monk was really eerie. At this time, people behind him had begun to clarify. Could this be the demon monk from Dusk Temple? Are you talking about that Dusk Temple known for producing renegade monks? Yes, that temple is mysterious, with many monks gaining divine skills, and either exploiting their masters or defecting from the temple to become frightening renegade monks in the martial world. Duan Yun's brows slightly furrowed. These martial artists, so many of them are mad. Next. At this time, the young monk turned his gaze towards the people standing before Huang Yu gang. Apart from gang leader Chan Shenyu, Huang Yu gang's members couldn't help but step back, Duan Yun included, retreating like the soldiers. But to his surprise, the young monk at this moment turned his gaze towards him. Chapter 30. These people are really impulsive. Duan Yun came to lend a hand in the fight. Thinking of the 2 silver pieces, he took his position at the front. As he watched the image of the quick knife wielder's head falling to the ground, he began to worry whether he could still get paid for assisting. Assisting, after all is said and done, only if the boss wins will he pay up generously. Or rather, the boss has to be alive to pay. The current situation was either lose or die. What made Duan Yun even more flabbergasted was that the young monk, when shouting next, was actually looking at him. The young demon monk looked at Duan Yun, the ugly wound on his neck still twitching, and said with a smile, "You're up." His seemingly gentle smile, at that moment, appeared more terrifying than a ghoul in everyone's eyes. Not just to Duan Yun himself, even the members of the Huangyu gang were stunned for a moment, not realizing which member of their gang Duan Yun was. Duan Yun wanted to tell the truth, to say that he wasn't a member of the Huangyu gang. That probably could have avoided this situation. But the young monk's behavior reminded him of some unpleasant memories. He was standing by the street when suddenly someone kicked him away like a ball. A few days later, the one who'd kicked him ran out of luck and came to kill him to vent their anger, simply because they didn't like the look of him or unilaterally decided he brought bad luck. And now this demon monk's actions were probably similar, disliking him and wanting to use him as a scapegoat. He was clearly already standing like a lackey. So Duan Yun took 2 steps back while leading a gray donkey. Others thought he was trying to evade, but he was actually finding the Huangyu gang member who had hired him to assist in the fight, and said, "Let's settle the bill first." The member of the Huangyu gang was taken aback, then came to his senses and gave Duan Yun 2 silver pieces as the fee for assistance. Thus, Duan Yun walked back, facing the demon monk with a spine-chilling smile, and said, "Are you picking on me because you think I'm better looking than you?" With that comment, the smile on the demon monk's face stiffened for a moment, and he said, "You guessed it right. Not just the monk, members of both the Red Crane Association and the Huangyu gang were somewhat astonished, because Duan Yun's behavior was not quite normal. Especially those who had failed to compete with Duan Yun for the assistance fee. They had been somewhat gleeful, feeling that Duan Yun deserved the misfortune, deserved to be scared silly or to tears. Yet not only was Duan Yun not scared silly or to tears, but he also drew the iron sword he carried with him and said to the demon monk, "You said to let me have 3 moves first, right?" The demon monk immediately regained his composure, replying with ease, "Of course." At this moment, the wound on his neck twisted and was almost completely healed. Such a scene was outright terrifying and malicious, as if a demon lived inside the monk's body. 2 silver pieces to face a monk like a monster. This was like using 2 silver pieces to gamble with one's life, to jump into a pit of fire. If it weren't for Duan Yun's dislike of feeling subjected, which reminded him of the days he was kicked around like a ball, giving him the false impression that his sword training was in vain, he really wouldn't have wanted to wade into these muddy waters. So he was ready to give his all. He looked at the young monk and said earnestly, "First move." The young monk still maintained a calm and eerie smile, yet the next moment, his pupils suddenly contracted. In just an instant, behind Duan Yun, the jade sword True Qi, bright as moonlight, burst forth, forming the image of the jade sword immortal dressed in black silk and a black skirt. The Dharma image's 1,000 arms moved fluidly, slashing out in unison with Duan Yun's sword. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The crescent-shaped sword Qi scattered like it cost nothing, sweeping over the young monk's body, almost completely enveloping him. As the sword light faded, the demon monk still stood there, his mouth opened, forming the shape of the word, "No." But the next moment, his mouth along with his head and body burst open, scattering on the ground. The ground was littered with his remains, which were too fragmented for even the term dismembered to suffice. Duan Yun had planned to deliver a second strike, as after all, this demon monk might be a monster, possibly capable of regenerating flesh and blood. Unfortunately, he soon realized there was no need. The dissected flesh just twisted eerily for a moment before losing its vitality. After all, there were too many pieces, so all that remained on the ground were the demon monk's eyes, still flashing with shock and terror. Why did a master capable of condensing a Dharma image suddenly emerge? The demon monk couldn't understand, and so he died. his eyes wide open in death. The onlookers were just as confused. Duan Yun paid them no heed, dispersing the Dharma image and leading his donkey to retreat. All around, a sudden silence fell, only to be shattered after a while by a woman's piercing scream. "Brother! My little brother! Your death was so tragic." The Red Crane Association's leader Hong Lao, who was just now beaming with pride, threw herself on the ground, clutching the demon monk's split head, wailing bitterly. Then, she glared at Chan Xianyu with venomous eyes. You have such a malicious heart, to deal with my brother and a woman like me in such a sneaky way. My brother is gone. No one else shall live. Brothers, attack. Fight the Huangyu gang to the end." Hong Lao shouted frenziedly. In this world, her little brother had always been her darling. Now that she had lost her darling, she wanted to destroy everything. Under normal circumstances, with so many people showing up, even hiring others to join the fight, a brawl wouldn't break out. Or rather, two gangs wouldn't engage in a deadly group fight under such circumstances. Instead, they would just demonstrate strength and bluff. Originally, in Hong Lao's plan, her beloved brother would return from learning his skills not only to be with her forever, but also to help her soar to the heavens with his astounding abilities. The West Pier was simply the first small step. The entire Yellow Water City could not satisfy the ambitions of the siblings. Hong Lao had even fantasized about countless wonderful futures involving them. Things were going so smoothly. No one was a match for her brother with his extraordinary skills. But suddenly, her world collapsed. They had sent someone to kill her darling brother. Having lost her beloved, her world, Hong Lao also lost her sanity. The gang members in front, who knew the situation, were still rational. They did not want to rush into a reckless fight, but the ones at the back were different. They had not seen what happened and only heard that the Huangyu gang had blatantly killed their vice gang leader. How could they endure this? And with their charming gang leader crying out for them to fight, how could they not? Sometimes a mob lacks only a spark to ignite. The people at the back, armed and crazed, pushed their way forward, and those at the front had no way to retreat. Thus, the two sides quickly came to blows, weapons clashing. Duan Yun, carrying Little Gray, reached a sloped path on higher ground, watching as the Huangyu gang's men charged forward, unaware of what had specifically happened. Was a gang fight about to begin? This was his first real-life experience watching a gang fight unfold, and he found the spectacle quite impressive for a moment. He knew that he could probably forget about the hearty meal promised by the Huangyu gang. Everyone was too busy fighting to care about owing him a meal. Duan Yun made a quick decision and left with Little Gray. As he walked away, he couldn't help but comment, "Ah, these people are too impulsive. They start fighting before they've even had their fill." Chapter 31. Rivers of Blood. Duan Yun left that place of conflict and trouble, only to find the road crowded with many who were rushing to witness the excitement. "Brother, if they really start hacking away, could it be dangerous? Seeing a real fight is thrilling. Blood spills like no one's paying for it." "That's right, as long as it's exciting, even dying is worth it." A group of people noisily went to watch the fun, while Duan Yun rode his gray donkey in the opposite direction. Because of the gang clash, shops nearby had closed their doors, but after earning these 2 silvers, he now had money for food. Drinking and betting on drinks cost money, so today he was determined to drink less. It was now the season transitioning from summer to autumn, yet the city was still filled with a hint of heat. On the nearly empty street, in front of a tavern, the flag signifying liquor listlessly swung with the wind, but Duan Yun's eyes brightened. He had learned a thing or two about drinking during this period. Just one whiff told him it was authentic plum wine, the most suitable drink for this weather. So he tied his donkey at the entrance and went straight in. The wine was freshly brewed plum wine, and the dishes were authentic home-cooked meals. He had indulged in local delicacies along his journey, and for this meal, he was going to be more restrained with his food and drinks. He didn't have much wine, and only ordered 2 dishes, yet he savored the rare delicacy. Only when one is poor do they understand the value of silver, and only after going hungry does one realize the preciousness of food. Earning these 2 silvers was not easy. He found it strange to think that for these 2 silvers he had to kill someone. But the martial world is strange indeed. He only wished to always maintain his pure and sincere goodness. Yes, he killed people, men, women, monks, and yet he was a good person. All he wanted, after succeeding in his sword training, was not to be bullied anymore. In this world, should good people be bullied? Should the honest be intimidated by those brandishing knives, showing off at their throats? With a sip of plum wine, Duan Yun's thoughts became agile, and he couldn't help feeling a surge of pride. He had made a good kill today. This monk who came from Dusk Temple looked like a demon in disguise, doing immense harm to others. Just standing there looking a bit more handsome than the rest. He drew the ire of the demon monk who insisted on picking a fight with him, wanting his life. Had he not been slightly skilled today, he would probably be dead by now. Duan Yun did not hold grudges, but he remembered these bizarre monks. Yes, from now on, whenever he encountered such harmful monks from Dusk Temple, he would surely kill them clean to settle the resentment from today. Thus, on Duan Yun's little notebook, following the fairy from Red House and the madman from Thunder God and Mother Sect, the demon monk from Dusk Temple was added. This martial world is just filled with too much trash. The plum wine was delicious. Duan Yun drank it slowly, enjoying every sip. Yet, he knew this wasn't the perfect way to enjoy the drink. If the wine was chilled, it would have tasted even better. He began to ponder where to acquire a secret book to learn something like the frost palm to chill his wine. It would be really wonderful. No, it would be best to learn both frost palm and flame fist. The frost palm could be used to chill drinks in the summer, and, as a precaution, the flame fist could warm drinks in the winter. When that time came, half frost and half flame, sampling both the ice and the fire may provide an even more delightful experience. Duan Yun was only halfway through his meal when the crowd that had gone to watch the fight came tumbling back. 2 of them even rushed into the tavern, drinking wine as if it were water to quench their thirst. They're killing like mad. Completely insane. The Huangyu gang and the Red Crane sect are hacking at each other with all they've got. It's practically a river of blood now. If I hadn't run fast, I'd have been chopped down right there. At this moment, someone in the tavern couldn't help but ask, why are they fighting so fiercely? Who knows what set them off? These people were thinking along the same lines as Duan Yun before. A confrontation of such magnitude would generally end with negotiations and one side conceding, or if it did come to blows, it would be a minor scuffle, similar to generals fighting one-on-one in a battlefield to decide who would withdraw. But today it turned into a real bloodbath. Listening to their conversations, Duan Yun couldn't help but mutter to himself again. These gang-affiliated martial artists have poor judgment, too impulsive. Why would they suddenly engage in a blood fight? Fortunately, I was rational and withdrew in time, or else I would have been drawn into it. He was content to leave with the 2 pieces of silver he had obtained, not lingering because of the meal he had. After all, when there are too many people and the frenzy is strong, there will certainly be no lack of those trampled to death. This blood fight lasted for a long time. In Duan Yun's eyes, people continually arrived and departed from the street. Many were from the 2 gangs, carrying injuries, some of them soaked in blood, clearly beyond saving. There were even those from both sides who had sustained severe injuries and went to seek medical help, only to start cursing and clashing with each other on the way, ending up as corpses in the street. By dusk, the blood fight had barely come to an end. It was truly a river of blood. Near the West Pier, the water was covered with floating bodies, and it was said that the government officials were hesitant to go there for a while. No one had expected the 2 gangs to clash in such a way. Watching this scene, Duan Yun couldn't help but sigh. Is it really that bad? Even though he had killed many people, even annihilated the Xuanxiong gang, the sight of hundreds of corpses still filled him with dread, as if he were in a living hell. He had killed the demon monk and left, unaware of what had happened after. It shouldn't have much to do with him. After all, he was just a passerby who was dragged in to join the fight, forced to fight back at most. For some reason, looking at the river of blood, Duan Yun actually felt a certain sense of exhilaration. A perverse delight like lancing boils and watching them burst open. Because all along the way, in his eyes, these gang-affiliated martial artists were mostly trash, no different from the juvenile members of the Xuanxiong gang. Poor judgment, love of impulsiveness, as if their muscles had grown into their brains, always fighting and killing, despite being at the bottom of the human world. They acted like lords, posturing and oppressing common folk, squeezing them dry. There are too many villains in the world, and too few good people like himself who can barely fight back, and that's why there is no such beauty. Now, it's good a dog-eat-dog bloodbath has actually brought some peace to this place. At least like in Lishui City, the unreasonable protection fees should be temporarily uncollectible. At this moment, there were still some people bold enough to plunder the corpses. Considering he was not rich, Duan Yun also joined in. But he soon came out. Firstly, the soldiers had arrived, and secondly, after groping around, apart from getting his hand disgustingly bloody, he didn't find anything valuable. In the end, he only hung 2 axes and a broken saber on his donkey, not sure how much money they would fetch. As night fell, Duan Yun decided to stay in an inn for 1 night before leaving. He was on his way to the inn when he saw several martial artists leaving the city together. Among them were survivors of the day's blood feud and wandering Jianghu individuals like Duan Yun, walking in small groups. Duan Yun followed behind them, listening to their conversation. According to the survivors of the feud, they couldn't stay in Yellow Water City after making such a mess and planned to seek refuge near Wangchun City. After all, the 2 gangs had been fighting for territory and had their hands stained with blood, having many other enemies. When their forces were strong, these enemies did not dare to make a move. But now, weakened by the blood feud, things were uncertain. The wandering Jianghu people, knowing the fall of the 2 major gangs, realized that there would be no more work like assisting in fights, and would have to look elsewhere. Hearing that these people were heading to Wangchun City, Duan Yun made a quick decision to follow them. On the road, asking for directions wasn't reliable, but this human map surely was, right? After traveling for a month, Duan Yun was really eager to get to his destination, Wangchun City. Because once there, he could put an end to his wandering life, and as a gynecologist, he could resume his old profession. People are always cheap, wanting to be a young hero when practicing as a doctor, and after having played the hero, they want to go back to being a doctor. It can only be said that alternating between being a young hero and a gynecologist is not a bad way for an adult to achieve a balance between work and leisure. Chapter 32 Demon Duan with a clear gaze. The night had fallen completely dark, yet these martial artists did not slow down at all, hurrying along as if Yellow Water City was inhabited by evil spirits. So many people died today. If all of them turned into ghosts, it would truly be frightening. Duan Yun could only urge Little Gray to speed up and blend in among them. Along the road, martial artists were grouped in 3s and 2s, not at all few in number. Of course, there were also quite a few lone wanderers of the martial world like Duan Yun. It must be said that martial artists are indeed more vigorous. The wilderness, which would normally be eerie and terrifying at night, seemed less so with such a group walking through it. After walking for 3 whole hours, until midnight, and seeing that they were a good distance away from Yellow Water City, and hearing the howling of wolves in the distant mountains, these martial artists finally stopped in groups to light fires and rest. At this time of year in Yun State, the difference in temperature between day and night was not small. The days were clearly hot, but the night was a bit cooler. Among the 4 seasons in Yun State, spring was definitively the best. Even during autumn, which should have been pleasant, it did not fare well, with dry heat during the day, as if autumn tigers were lurking, and at night heavy cold dew and frosts made one feel cold. It is said that the name Wangchun City originated from the people of Yun State's longing for spring. It must be said that those in the martial path do have good physical constitution, for even after traveling for most of the night, and some carrying injuries, there were still those who were energetic and did not sleep. Duan Yun made a fire near a few Jianghu people, barely integrating himself into the edge of the group. There were 5 or 6 Jianghu people chatting together. The firelight reflected on their faces. Clearly, they were still shaken by the events that had taken place in Yellow Water City today. Han, you had just joined the Huangyu gang not long ago. My brother and I were hoping to lean on you to get in, but who would have thought the gang would be gone just like that? A young man couldn't help but say. Han had a sullen face, saying with a sigh, "Who knew it would turn so violent so suddenly? I'm a native of Yellow Water City. Our gang and the Red Crane sect have fought many times, and there have been plenty of deaths, but I've never seen anything as outrageous as today. Everyone was fighting like mad, hacking at each other as if their lives didn't matter. Both sides' leaders are gone, and we underlings are almost finished as well." Another man lamented. "Once it started, no one could stop it. I can't even figure out why the fight broke out so suddenly," the young man questioned once again. Han was silent for a while before speaking. "I wasn't too far in front when it started, but I managed to figure out some things. They said that a master suddenly emerged from our gang and killed the brother of Hong Lao from the other side, and then the melee began. But Hong Lao's brother was a renegade monk from Dusk Temple. How high of a master would that killer have to be?" One of them replied, "Who knows, must be as tall as a few floors high." At this point, Han couldn't help but say, "The reason I told you to travel through the night was that I found out after inquiring around. Our Huangyu gang and the Red Crane sect ended up like this all because of that man. We suspect that person is a demon." "What, a demon? Keep your voice down. Think about it, would our Huangyu gang and the Red Crane sect end up like this without that person? You're not wrong, we just couldn't figure it out. The territory has always been settled by negotiation. Even if there's a fight, it's usually just minor skirmishes. Who would have thought it would result in a full gang war? Now that you mention a demon, it makes sense. In the martial world, there are some demons who take pleasure in watching others bleed and suffer, rejoicing in the massacre of many. The demon merely needed to use some tricks to bring down the two biggest powers in Yellow Water City. Truly terrifying indeed. Indeed, his ability to slaughter that demon monk is frightening enough. But what's even scarier is his casual capability to wreak havoc across a region. Are we safe now, then?" At that moment, the young martial artist couldn't help but look around, his voice tinged with fear. By now, the people sitting around the fire had all tensely grown apprehensive, their eyes filled with dread. Some even felt a chill so sharp they couldn't help but rub their hands in front of the fire, as if the demon from the rumors might suddenly reach out a hand and drag them into the dark to slaughter them. Even Duan Yun himself felt the demon was rather terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that he was the one involved, he would actually believe their nonsense. He was nothing but an honest man unfairly targeted for bullying, so how did he become the demon responsible for rivers of blood in Yellow Water City? All in all, he was merely an unfortunate soul forced into defending himself against an attack from the demon monk, entirely unaware of anything else. All these tales of him moving stealthily, causing the slaughter of thousands. It was utter defamation. The worst he had ever done was annihilate the entire Xuanxiong gang. Why do these people, just like that goddess catcher, love to fabricate wild stories? At this point, the group began to inquire about the details. "Brother Han, what exactly does that demon look like?" "As far as I know, the demon sneaked in under the pretense of assisting. Think about it, which legitimate assistant would stand at the front lines? That's just asking for trouble. Brother Huang, who's now missing a leg, told me at the time he was near the front, saying the demon had a fair and handsome appearance, holding a plain iron sword with clear and bright eyes. If not for the sword in his hand, you would think he was a young doctor. It said that before he killed the younger brother of the Red Crane sect leader, the demon made sure the people from our gang had settled his 2 silvers of assistance fee, and then he began his murder spree." "What? Before committing murder and stirring trouble, he didn't forget about his 2 silvers of reward? That's utterly heartless and insane. Who knows how many disasters this demon has caused to be so skillful at manipulating people. That's what's so sinister and frightening about this demon. He's about to cause corpses to float down rivers from 2 different gangs and yet doesn't forget those 2 silvers. A true fanatic. That's why I told you all to run with me. Who knows what other dreadful plans this demon might have." Upon hearing this, everyone was horrified. "Duan Yun, by the way, there's another point. The demon not only looks harmless to humans and animals with his clear eyes deceiving people, but he also had a donkey with him. What, he had a donkey too? A man with clear and bright eyes, accompanied by a foolish donkey, causing two gangs to bleed into rivers, corpses everywhere. Just thinking of this scene was eerily sinister, and for a moment, the donkey that was accompanying the demon seemed all the more mysterious and terrifying. Coincidentally, a donkey brayed suddenly at that moment. Everyone's hearts jumped, and they couldn't help but look in the direction of the sound. They saw not far from them a gray donkey grazing, and next to it, a young man with clear eyes, handsome features, holding an iron sword, looking very much like a doctor. Almost simultaneously, everyone's hearts skipped a beat, because at that moment, the young man was looking at them, casting a malevolent smile their way. Chapter 33 Karmic Affinity. The 6 Jianghu people's sinister smiles, in Duan Yun's view, were actually not what they seemed. He could swear with a heavy conscience that the smile he cast was filled with enormous goodwill, warm, as if basking in the spring breeze, but due to misunderstandings, it transformed in the eyes of others. That person is not me, Duan Yun tried to explain. In fact, when he said this, he didn't have much confidence. He was a very honest person, and the person mentioned by the others was both him and not him. This group of Jianghu people were greatly frightened when they saw in the dead of night such a person with clear eyes, accompanied by a donkey, and holding an iron sword, who looked very much like a young doctor. If their previous conversation imagined the demon merely as a silhouette, then in the dead of night, this young man seemed as if the demon had leaped into reality. Everyone was stunned. If not for the flickering firelight, Duan Yun would have thought time had stopped. At that moment, Han suddenly said with a laugh, "Brother, you really have a sense of humor. How could that person be you? If it were you, would we still be alive?" The others quickly caught on and started to laugh. Right, it was just a coincidence. A mighty demon who could turn a city chaotic with rivers of blood by a mere flip of his hand. How could he possibly be following behind a bunch of minions? Unless the demon was sick. But is there a demon without affliction? The atmosphere eased a little, but a few cautious folks were still quite unnerved. The demon who had troubled Yellow Water City really left a deep psychological shadow on them. So much so that even seeing another young man with a donkey startled them. It wasn't until the late hours of the night, when they found that Duan Yun still had clear eyes and showed no strange behavior, that these people finally relaxed. In the morning when they set off again, Duan Yun didn't deliberately follow the group, but instead switched to another team. He could see that he, resembling the demon, had still frightened these fellows. Duan Yun couldn't help feeling depressed. How had he, a fine young hero championing justice, became the treacherous demon in others' narratives? Yet as he walked on, Duan Yun realized he continued to startle other martial artists. It seemed that overnight, everyone knew about a demon with a donkey, handsome looks, clear eyes, resembling a young doctor. Some even knew his surname was Duan. Who the heck is spreading these damn rumors about me? Fonglin Town is an old town west of Wangchun City. The Liu family is a prominent family in Fonglin Town, and Mr. Liu, having passed 50, has taken in a new concubine today, a festive occasion which always lasts late into the night. When the guests had departed, and Ming Yu already hung low in the west. Thinking of the beauty in the room, Mr. Liu hurriedly and secretly drank several glasses of the long-stored tiger penis wine, and consumed 2 large dragon tiger pills, preparing himself for a good time. Indeed, this concubine, although 18 years old, had a face like a young girl, but the parts of her body that should be plump were in no way thin, truly irresistible. It was precisely because of the youthful disgrace that Mr. Liu used his power to compel the marriage with this maiden from another region. He entered the bridal chamber, and the concubine, shy and seemingly pitiable, greeted him. Mr. Liu felt the alcohol and the vigor from the dragon tiger pills surge simultaneously, as if returning to his spirited young days, and immediately lunged forward. 10 breaths later, Mr. Liu lay on the bed like a dead dog, gasping rather violently. Otherwise, one might think he really had died. The concubine lightly kicked him, then turned over to sleep by herself. Mr. Lu marveled at his own vigor. At his age, to sustain for a third of the duration from his youth was really the result of good maintenance. Thinking of the submissive manner of the concubine just now, Mr. Lu felt satisfied. He had forcefully married this concubine, a girl even younger than his own daughter, who, having lost her virtue, could only follow him silently. This was his old strategy. This woman had resisted strongly days ago, but tonight, she had succumbed to his prowess. Due to the excessive exertions, and having had many commitments during the day, Mr. Lu quickly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, a cold breeze blew in, and he suddenly awoke. Mr. Lu couldn't help but reach out to embrace his lovely wife, only to find no one beside him. Where had his bride gone at this late hour? The silvery moonlight illuminated the window paper, and all around was silent. Could she have gone to the outhouse? Feeling a bit thirsty, Mr. Lu got up to pour himself a glass of water. Just as he had drunk halfway, he heard a faint gasping sound. This voice came from not far away, sounding very much like that of his newlywed wife. A bad premonition formed in Mr. Lu's heart, causing his face to turn somewhat green. His disgraceful second son, licentious since childhood, had stolen his stepmother's affection years ago. At that time, he had severely punished the unworthy son. Yet Mr. Lu knew his son's nature was hard to change. Alas, since he is my son, my concubine could also be considered part of his share reluctantly. But does it have to be so urgent? This is clearly the night of my wedding. Mr. Lu was so angry that his forehead veins bulged, and he rolled up his sleeves and walked out. The door was left ajar, which made Mr. Lu feel even worse. Does this mean that this wife delivered herself to the situation? Such an innocent-looking face, who would have thought? Mr. Lu tiptoed closer. The voice indeed came from a side room not far from his bedroom. At this moment, Mr. Lu could no longer deny such an affair. For the voice was now very clear, and he was burning with rage, his beard trembling. Then the panting voice disappeared. Mr. Lu hurriedly approached. He hesitated for a moment, but eventually pushed the door open. With a creak, after the concubine's panting stopped, the surroundings suddenly became very quiet. Not long after entering the room, Mr. Lu saw his newlywed concubine lying on the wooden bed, her clothes disheveled, exposing a vast expanse of snowy white skin. He walked over furiously and pointed at the concubine, saying fiercely, "Look what you've done!" The concubine, whether out of fright or something else, lay on the bed facing away from him without turning around. After hearing the master's scolding, she still faced away and said faintly, "Master, I am no longer pure. Will you still love me?" "I." Mr. Lu, looking at his concubine's snowy white skin, felt a surge of blood stuck in his chest and said fiercely, "Where is that little bastard?" Mr. Lu looked around but saw no one, so he bent down to check under the bed. The moonlight was decent tonight, but beneath the bed was dim. At first glance, Mr. Lu got a fright, for it looked like there was a person with a very flat head lying there. A head so flat could definitely not be his son. The next moment, Mr. Lu finally breathed a sigh of relief. He realized that it wasn't a person with a flat head, but rather a set of clothes and pants. The clothes and pants were connected and slightly bulged, giving the appearance of a person. "That scoundrel's clothes and pants are here. Where is he?" "Hee." Suddenly, a man's laughter echoed in the room. Mr. Lu immediately recognized it as his son's voice and became even more furious. He hurriedly continued searching for him, but as he searched, something felt amiss. The voice was clearly in this room, but he couldn't find anyone at the moment. The next moment, Mr. Lu raised his head and his heart skipped a beat. He saw a naked man hanging from the ceiling, laughing with his white teeth and red gums exposed. Mr. Lu recognized him as his unfilial son, but he felt strangely unfamiliar, because his son was covered in red threads, hanging there. His face and body seemed to be left with only a layer of skin. Yes, it was as if all the flesh and blood inside had been sucked dry by something. What could it be? Mr. Lu thought of something and looked down. He saw the concubine who had been facing away from him the whole time had now turned around. Her eyes pure black without any whites, her entire being lifeless, resembling a cold corpse. Then at that moment, the corpse spoke. "Master, come love me. We will never part." A ghost! In the middle of the night, Lu Mansion was filled with a piercing wail. Chapter 34. Re-encountering the women of the Red House. On this day, Duan Yun arrived at Fenglin Town. Upon reaching this place, he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. According to the information he gathered, from Fenglin Town, heading straight east, it would only take a day's walk to reach Wangchun City. This place could already be considered the outskirts of Wangchun City. In fact, he had sensed the aura of Wangchun City 2 days ago. It can only be said that the closer one gets to Wangchun City, the higher the prices become. The day before, 10 copper coins could buy 2 baked buns, but now they could only buy 1. After such a long journey, he was finally about to arrive. In Fenglin Town, both inside and outside the town, tall maple trees were planted. In this season, they brought waves of cool shade. Duan Yun even felt that the whole town was somewhat eerie. At this moment, he noticed several martial world individuals standing in front of a wall plastered with papers, chatting away. He knew at a glance that it was a bounty wall. Thinking of the ever-rising prices, Duan Yun wanted to earn some silver, so he approached. Fenglin Town was just a small place, and there weren't many bounty posters. But as soon as Duan Yun came close, his spirits lifted. This was due to a few key terms that spilled out of the mouths of those martial world individuals. Lu family, red building ferry, bounty. Duan Yun looked at the wall and realized that it actually aligned with his expertise. It turned out that the town's Lu family had been persecuted by the red building ferry. Several of the men inside had been violated to death, but that ferry still refused to spare them. Hence the bounty was posted. "Brother Li, are you going? Mr. Lu is sure to be generous." "But that's the red building ferry. Aren't you afraid of being violated to death?" "Who have I ever feared when it comes to competing in violation? Besides, it's said that the Lu family has invited the high monks from Taishui Temple. We're just going to scrounge a meal." Brother Wang is right. After all, it's just going to lend a hand. For these wandering martial world people, lending a hand is one of their main sources of income. At this point, that Brother Li hesitated and said, "Lend a hand? Have you heard about the incident in Yellow Water City? There's a demon causing chaos. Nowadays, even lending a hand is risky. If we don't lend a hand, then what kind of martial world life are we leading? I've been strapped for cash lately. If you're not going, I'm not." While those several people were still discussing whether to go or not, Duan Yun had already memorized the address and left before them. He already had a grudge against the red building ferry, so for a matter that could both settle a score and receive compensation while acting for heaven, why wait? This was simply tailor-made for young hero Duan. Although along the way, his reputation as Demon Duan had been sensational, the name of young hero Duan had barely made the rounds. But he knew this was temporary, a misunderstanding by others. As long as he conducted this righteous deed well, impressively, truly making a hero's name for himself as Hua Wu did, naturally no one would misunderstand him anymore. The Lu mansion had a profound courtyard, and at this moment, the slanting setting sun added a touch of profundity to it. Under the lead of housekeeper Lu, Duan Yun made his way to the main hall. Upon arriving at the hall, he found that there were quite a few martial world peers there. Although they were all peers, peers were still ranked. Sitting in the chief seat of the hall was a monk, bare-chested. The monk's body was embroidered with 3 huge azure dragons, 2 of which had their right eyes located at the chest's 2 protrusions, making them look like cyclopes, giving off a fierce and evil aura. What an imposing monk! This must be the high monk from Taishui Temple as rumored, indeed looking formidable. Beside the main seat were a male and a female Taoist, both carrying swords, looking to be a Taoist couple, and there was also a large man with iron gauntlets on his hands as black as coal. At a glance, these were all prominent figures, while Duan Yun could only stand at the back with a group of peers, mingling with the family servants. Just great, standing around like a lackey again. Duan Yun didn't mind, as long as he could kill the Red House madwoman and get the reward. Anything he did was just part of the job. Can such a person really make a living? Someone whispered. Even though he was just standing there like a foot soldier, wielding a cheap iron sword, Duan Yun was still looked down upon by certain peers. He wasn't angry. After all, these martial artists weren't renowned for their intelligence. Although housekeeper Lu was polite, he didn't introduce him and just had him stand with the Lu mansion's other enforcers, clearly not expecting much, merely seeing him as an extra headcount. There was no helping it. He was young and handsome, not like those odd-looking experts, and exuded an aura of someone just trying to get by. At that moment, a young man came over and said, "Brother, are you here to scrape a living too?" The young man had fair skin, a handsome face, and like Duan Yun, radiated an air of muddling along for survival. Duan Yun raised an eyebrow and replied, "Something like that. Stay back when the time comes. See that big monk? The high monk from Taishui Temple, known as the One-Eyed Green Dragon. He doesn't know when to stop once he starts killing, and might even hit one of our own in his frenzy," the young man said quietly. His voice was so low, if not for Duan Yun's good hearing, he might have mistaken it for a mosquito buzzing. If he even hits his own people, why call him one-eyed? Isn't that just blind? Duan Yun couldn't help but retort sarcastically. He didn't have a good impression of monks to begin with, and from what was said, although this one-eyed green dragon monk wasn't some demonic monk from Dusk Temple, he still didn't seem like an easy opponent. Hearing his comment, those nearby retreated a few steps, fearing they would invite trouble. The young man also became nervous and covertly glanced over at the big monk before relaxing slightly after seeing him still meditating with eyes closed. "Brother, you sure dare to speak." Saying so, he also distanced himself a bit from Duan Yun, because he realized that not only was Duan Yun filled with the air of someone scraping by, but he also exuded a vibe of bringing trouble upon himself. It was then that the male Taoist had a sip of tea and said, "Master, it's almost dark." The big monk opened his eyes and said, "What, you stinky Taoist are scared?" The middle-aged Taoist laughed and said, "Scared of what? You lot of stinky Taoists just know how to pretend. Why don't you and your wife lead the charge later?" the big monk said mockingly. With that, the Taoist fell silent. The big monk didn't give him any face and continued to taunt. "You don't dare? If you don't dare, how are you any different from those fools who are just here for a meal?" Duan Yun looked over at the group labeled as fools and thought the big monk was very polite. He was interested to see what skills this monk possessed. If the monk turned out to be less capable than himself, he wanted to teach him some physics for that mouth. On the way here, Duan Yun had gotten a rough idea of the Red House madwoman's modus operandi. Mr. Lu, old and lustful, had married a Red House madwoman pretending to be young. As a result, the madwoman not only cuckolded him but also killed his 2 sons and 2 bodyguards. During the act, she didn't just drain their yang qi but could even consume their flesh and blood. The madwoman even declared she wanted to be with all the males in Mr. Lu's family forever, just as she had consumed their flesh, never to part. The madwoman came to the mansion every night to seek her prey, and tonight was the 5th night. If not for the high monk from Taishui Temple taking the lead, there wouldn't be many willing to come for a meal. After all, the red building fairy was the nightmare of many men. Night had fallen, with a thin crescent moon hanging in the sky, its light frosty. The great hall of the Lu mansion was surrounded by lanterns, as if, in the hearts of people, a plethora of lanterns could frighten away the red building fairy. Damn it, bullies the weak and fears the strong. Lord Buddha is here, and that mad woman dares not to show up. The big monk took a sip of tea, spat it out, and a few tea leaves flew onto the face of the female Taoist sitting next to him. Duan Yun saw it clearly. The female Taoist wore a shocked and disgusted expression but dared not say anything. She looked towards her Taoist couple brother. The middle-aged Taoist had a pained expression but didn't dare do anything, simply silently holding the female Taoist's hand, signaling her to endure. Just then, a cold wind blew through, causing the lanterns outside and the candles inside the hall to flicker violently. as if they might go out at any moment. Here she comes. She's coming. Suddenly, a servant outside screamed in panic, tumbling and scrambling towards inside the hall. Chapter 35. Are there any experts? Just then, a young and innocent-looking woman's face appeared abruptly beside the doorframe, catching everyone's eye. Admittedly, it was quite a pretty face. And in the next moment, when the woman's body also came into view, many present lit up. This was the classic beauty with youthful looks and a sizable bust, a rarity even among the fairies of the Red House. At this point, the big monk burst into laughter, saying, "Well done!" Out of excitement, he spat out a mouthful of tea leaves onto the female Taoist's face. The female Taoist sat there, her face now covered in ma-zi. But this was not the main point. The main point was, the Red House madwoman had arrived. The big monk, without any hesitation, stood out. The next moment, he took out two white, translucent scarves and wrapped one around his chest and the other over his eyes. These scarves were shaped like two bowls, perfectly covering the monk's eyes and the 2 points on his chest, which to Duan Yun looked just like he was wearing two bras. A burly monk ingrained with an azure dragon, suddenly adopting such a seductive look made Duan Yun want to cry. This was just too much for the eyes. And then, the big monk, shaking the covering on his chest, loudly shouted, "Evil woman, I want you to aid in my cultivation." At this moment, the image of Fa Hai in Duan Yun's mind suddenly blurred, and his eyes became moist. Talk about mental pollution. The big monk's bizarre look really made one's scalp tingle and eyes sting. However, the youthfully voluptuous fairy from the Red House was no ordinary person either. With a flirtatious remark, "So it's the ugly monk from Taishui Temple," she charged at him. As the Red House fairy approached, the big monk's muscles tremored, the coverings over his chest heaved, and the two azure dragons on his body seemed to come to life. Without any hesitation, he threw a punch. With a thud, his fist as large as a casserole hit the fairy's head, resonating like a morning bell and evening drum, distorting the air around them. Such a punch could shatter gold and split stones. The Red House fairy's head slammed heavily into the ground, nearly deformed. Yet the next moment, she stood up as if nothing happened, and with a coy laugh said, "Such a heavy hand. I like it." The big monk chuckled, then grasped a gold-plated stick lying nearby, and with a buzz swept it at the youthful face of the Red House fairy. The Red House fairy elegantly leapt into the air, avoiding the swing, and teasingly said, "Monk, is this the only stick you have?" At the same time, her expression became even more enchanting. The big monk laughed heartily, and with a thud planted the stick into the ground, saying, "Bold demoness, don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I'll give you a chance. Demoness, come and aid in my cultivation." The next instant, the one-eyed green dragon monk squatted down in a horse stance. His muscles bulged, and the covering over his chest almost became completely transparent from stretching. Duan Yun couldn't help but want to cry again. But this Red House mad woman was also heavyweight. She could really handle it. At that moment, she wrapped around the big monk like a snake. The flesh on the monk's chest trembled, and the two one-eyed green dragons seemed to come alive, twisting about. His body began to heat up, turning a bright red. Unable to bear the heat, the Red House mad woman cried out, "It's so hot! So hot!" While the big monk snorted coldly, squatting even deeper, the eyes beneath the coverings shining brightly, and said, "Mad woman, is that all you've got?" Overwhelmed by the scorching sensation, the Red House mad woman tried to leave, but the big monk grasped her tightly, preventing her escape. Duan Yun had to admit this monk really had some skills. Mental pollution coupled with solid martial prowess was too much for the average person. With a slap, the monk's two fingers penetrated the Red House mad woman's chin, and the scorching essence from his body followed, causing the wound on the mad woman to emit puffs of white smoke. With the situation looking great, the onlooking crowd relaxed. As usual, with the one-eyed green dragon monk around, scrounging for food didn't pose much danger. But the next moment, the monk suddenly let out a scream of pain. The blood from the wound on the Red House mad woman seemed to come alive, swiftly infiltrating his body through his eye. The one-eyed green dragon monk gritted his teeth and pushed his gong power to the limit. His entire body turned red-hot like a branding iron. The blood that had surged into his eye emitted white steam and began to evaporate. Despite this, it was clear that the monk was in anguish. At this time, the mad woman's eyes from the Red House were devoid of whites, and her body lacked any signs of life. In a flash, she opened her mouth and her vibrant tongue shot out like a dart, striking right into the right eye of the one-eyed green dragon monk. With a smack, a burst of blood bloomed in mid-air. The one-eyed green dragon monk's eye was injured, seeming as if the attacking tongue weighed 1,000 pounds, slamming him heavily into the ground. Once the one-eyed green dragon monk's defense broke, the half-burned blood swiftly squirmed into his wounds like worms, provoking a horrifying scream from him. You are an elder level. Someone help. Let's all attack together." The tide of battle swiftly turned for the worse. He should have kept quiet, but as soon as he spoke, the surrounding fools quickly retreated, trying to escape. Calling them fools was apt. For just a few silvers, they were risking their lives against an elder from the Red House. In the martial world, the fairies of the Red House are terrifying, and an elder from the Red House is not only advanced in age but also boasts Tonya-level strength. A Red House fairy of this strength, the sect leader of an ordinary sect would steer clear by a wide berth, and even the infamous monks from the Taishui Temple would need to be at the Hall Master level to contend. The one-eyed green dragon monk still had some ways to go. The elders of the Red House have always been known for their seduction of beautiful men, and only those with substance. Who would have thought that this elder from the Red House would have such unusual tastes to even seduce the Liu family's men, known for their unattractiveness? The great monk tried to roll away and flee, but the next moment, his whole body convulsed. The Red House elder, with youthful looks but enormous assets, clung to him, her dart-like tongue piercing into the flesh of his back. For a moment, her tongue seemed like a giant straw, ceaselessly sucking away at the monk's essence and blood. It likely wouldn't be long before the monk was sucked dry to a husk. Imagine a mosquito bigger than a human, suddenly numbing you and greedily sucking your essence with a giant proboscis. The thought alone is terrifying. "No, please, Senior, spare me. I am the chief disciple of Taishui Temple. I will remember your lifelong gratitude." The great monk begged for mercy. "What bullshit, Taishui Temple? Your entire temple will sooner or later be seduced and drained by this old lady." The Red House mad woman laughed heartily as she continued to feed. She swooped up the great monk's body, preparing to block any attempt at escape. Today, nobody expects to. The word escape in the mad woman's mouth was shattered in an instant, as a silvery white sword chi pierced through her throat. But even with a shattered throat, she did not die. With a snap, she flung the monk to the ground with her tongue and quickly focused on Duanyun, who was forming a sword finger, her broken voice declaring, "Another expert has arrived." Wow! The Red House mad woman spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, her figure ghostly drifting towards Duanyun. Duanyun could tell that this Red House fairy was madder and more formidable than the one he had encountered that night. But he had also changed since then. With a buzz, the ordinary iron sword in his hand was unsheathed. Chapter 36. Slain under the horse. Facing the red building women, whose movement technique was like a ghost, Duanyun dared not be the slightest bit careless. The ordinary iron sword was drawn from its sheath, swiftly sweeping out 2 crescent moon-like sword chi. The Red House mad woman stepped in the air as if there were invisible stairs, bringing her ghost-like body to dodge away swiftly. This is the Qinggong of Red House, capable of flying and sneaking at the same time. The 2 sword chi slashed onto the wall, tearing open 2 cuts as if the wall was made of paper. During this period, Duanyun, even though he was traveling day and night, did not stop his cultivation. The jade sword True Chi, integrated with moonlight within him, became purer and more powerful than before. Because on this journey, he found that there are too many people to kill in the notebook. How can he not become stronger? Such power of sword chi, even the elder of Red House was very wary of it. The young man who had greeted Duanyun earlier was hiding in a corner, shivering, and casting a shocked look at Duanyun that read, "So he's not just messing around." The throat of the Red House elder was pierced, knowing she could not delay any further. She saw her body ghostly floating at a high frequency in the air, with the curves of her chest also undulating frequently, pressing toward Duanyun again. Embrace Sparrow Tail. Duanyun didn't hesitate at all, going all out. The pure jade sword True Chi stretched out behind him, forming the white silk jade sword Immortal Dharma image. Kill! The many jade hands of Jade Sword Immortal pinched the sword fingers and pushed forward. Dozens of jade sword finger sword energies shot towards the Red House elder, like a fierce wind and severe rain. Even if the movement technique of the Red House elder was fast and ghostly, she couldn't dodge so many sword chi. Bang, bang, bang. Her body now had more than 10 holes with blood splattering. And at this time, enduring the severe pain, she fiercely pushed both palms forward. The whistling palm wind carried her blood towards Duanyun. Duanyun raised his sword and swept. Most of the blood was swept away, but at this moment, Duanyun heard a buzzing sound in his ears. He saw the blood in the air turning into fine droplets rushing towards him. Duanyun remembered seeing the image of a monk being eroded by the blood and suddenly realized, "It's worms. This mad woman has filled her blood with these tiny flying insects." The insects adhered to the skin and were about to burrow into the flesh in a blink. It was only then that the Red House elder finally showed a sinister smile at the corner of her mouth. Although she had just been overpowered and even severely injured by this young man, as long as he was touched by my blood worms, he should just wait to be completely devoured. The tiny blood worms surged towards Duanyun like maggots on bones, burrowing into his skin and flesh, bringing painful stings. In everyone's eyes, Duanyun was being devoured by the blood that seemed alive. It's over. The situation took a sharp turn for the worse. But then, a silky cold light burst out from Duanyun's body, extremely sharp, breaking body sword energy. The chilly fine sword chi directly overwhelmed the small insects in the blood, cutting them down, just like Duanyun previously cutting down mosquitoes in the wilderness. Thus, the blood of the Red House elder fell to the ground one after another. How is this possible? Breaking body sword energy broke the blood worms, and Duanyun did not pause at all, launching a counterattack. Embrace Sparrow Tail. Jade Sword True Chi burst out, forming the Jade Sword Immortal Dharma again. But this time it was the Black Silk Jade Sword Immortal. Kill! The jade hands of Black Silk Jade Immortal Sword circled, unleashing more Jade Sword Finger Sword energy. The Red House elder gritted her teeth and once again tried to use her movement technique, but this time she was not so lucky. If previously the sword chi emitted by the White Silk Jade Immortal Sword was a fierce straight line, now the sword chi from the sword finger was a bizarre arc, and with her already being injured, she was hit by more than 20 sword fingers while moving sideways, almost turning into a sieve. Duanyun, carried away in the heat of the kill, let out a loud shout, "Kill!" The Black Silk Jade Immortal Sword shed its black silk, transforming instantaneously into the elegant White Silk Jade Sword Immortal. This time, however, Duanyun did not form a sword finger, but instead gripped an iron sword, unleashing a water moon slash. Along with Duanyun, the White Silk Jade Sword Immortal's jade hand also generated a phantom of sword chi, slashing together. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The chilling sword light swept across like a streak of silk, lighting up the entire hall in snow-bright brilliance. The air was filled with the piercing sounds of cutting through the air, left by the passing sword chi. Ah! The sharp sword chi directly penetrated the body of the Red House elder and then struck the wall behind, leaving a clear mark of the sword. The body of the Red House elder still hovered midair, her eyes filled with unparalleled shock and disbelief. The next moment, with a thud, her body heavily fell to the ground, her limbs dismembered. Legs were legs, arms were arms, and bits remained bits. Yet this youthful-looking busty red building fairy did not immediately die but said, What kind of sword is this? She couldn't finish her sentence before she suddenly died explosively. Seeing this, Duan Yun thought to himself, Red building evil woman -1. Indeed, one step closer to wiping them all out. Next, the flesh of this red building fairy writhed as the worms she had nurtured within her flesh tried to break free upon no longer being restrained. Duan Yun stretched out his hand, and fine sword chi flew out like rain, creating a curtain of sword mist. The blood worms were completely annihilated the moment they left the body. After completing this, Duan Yun stood in place, his chest heaving violently, exhaling as if shooting arrows. His body had several broken skin spots, one even bleeding, making this the most severe injury he had suffered since mastering his swordsmanship. This was all caused by the blood worms breaking through the flesh and burrowing inward. Fortunately, he was more skilled and had created a breaking body sword energy move on his own, preventing more severe injuries. Having used Embrace Sparrowtail continuously, Duan Yun was also significantly drained, his hands trembling slightly. It must be said that this mad woman was fierce, pushing him to such an extent. The room fell silent for a moment, everyone watching Duan Yun catching his breath as if they were looking at a deity. Especially those martial artists who previously thought Duan Yun was not even qualified to mix into their ranks, now turned pale, neither able to run nor stay, fearing that this significant figure might hold grudges against these lesser folks, possibly killing them all with a flick of his finger. And the previously arrogant one-eyed green dragon monk also lowered his proud head. They were both dealing with evil demons, but the disparity was simply too vast. Especially recalling his own disastrous process of evil woman, I want you to help me cultivate. His thick face blushed in shame. At this moment, Duan Yun had caught his breath and surveyed his surroundings, asking, So, who's in charge here? Come out and settle the accounts, please. Yes, he had completed the task on the bounty list, and it was time to settle accounts. Housekeeper Lu, with trembling legs, walked out and said, The master is unconscious, and the young master just fainted from a fall while escaping. Immortal, you might have to wait. Duan Yun always felt that being called immortal sounded like a curse, so he said, Don't call me immortal. My name is Duan Yun. Just call me Young Hero Duan. Today's battle should indeed boost Young Hero Duan's reputation. He couldn't always bear the title of Demon Duan, as a good-hearted, outstanding young man. Do you provide meals here? Is the cook faint? Duan Yun suddenly asked. Housekeeper Lu replied tentatively, Young hero, the cook is not faint. Ask him to prepare some food. I'm hungry, Duan Yun said. Indeed, he was genuinely hungry. It had been a very exhausting battle. All right. Housekeeper Lu immediately arranged for it. Just a moment ago, they were engaged in a life-and-death struggle with the red building evil woman, filled with dangerous moments, and up until now, the leading one-eyed green dragon monk still hadn't gotten up. But now, Lu Mansion was already arranging meals, creating a rather dreamlike sensation, as if it were all a dream. But the Red House elder, dismembered on the ground, proved this was not a dream but reality. For a moment, everyone looked at Duan Yun with even greater reverence. This surely wasn't any ordinary young hero. He was clearly a hero. Chapter 37 Master, I want to practice piling work too. The cooks at Lu Mansion were professional, and it didn't take long for them to prepare a table full of dishes. Duan Yun began to eat, concentrating heavily on his food. The food was delicious, and he was truly hungry. After slaying the evil woman of Red House, he was in great spirits and his appetite surged. It had been a long time since he had killed so heartily. That evil woman with a baby face really added to his excitement. But this also gave Duan Yun a rough understanding of his own strength. He was only slightly more powerful than the elder evil women of the Red House. Clearly, this was not enough. It was far from enough to achieve his goal of eradicating all filth from the human world. After arriving in Wangchun City, he would need to continue collecting martial arts secret books, relying on his one-in-a-million cultivation talent and clever intelligence to further strengthen himself. The day he mastered his skills would be the day of misery for those treacherous, murderous scoundrels. Thinking of this, Duan Yun couldn't help but down a few more drinks, feeling a surge of boldness. Killing that murderous and treacherous mad woman felt exhilarating. In the eyes of one-eyed green dragon monk and others, his young hero posture was even more magnificent and heroic. The next moment, everyone was stunned. Because of Duan Yun's unique way of drinking, he even shot the liquor from his fingers, spraying it high into the air. Only someone with such talent could drink in such a way. Indeed, the previously seated one-eyed green dragon monk, a male and a female Taoist, as well as the black man wearing knuckle gloves, were now all standing aside like lackeys. Duan Yun invited them to eat together, but they were reluctant to join. First, they were a bit intimidated given that Duan Yun was capable of slaying the elder of the Red House. His strength was at least at the Tongyu realm. In the martial arts world, the strong are revered, and such a person could easily lead a mid-sized sect. Moreover, this young hero Duan was so young, indicating an astonishing talent and a promising future. If only they could find a way, they even wished to recognize young hero Duan as their godfather. Secondly, they felt embarrassed. Truth be told, apart from the one-eyed green dragon monk, none of them had ever engaged in a fight with the Tongyu-level elder of the Red House. They hadn't even touched her, only thinking of escaping. Perhaps in the future, only the one-eyed green dragon monk could boast, "I assisted hero Duan in slaying the elder of the Red House." Not wanting to impose, Duan Yun didn't force them to sit as eating was more important. A full meal was essential for living a better life, becoming stronger, and enjoying the beauty of life. Or to put it another way, eating was basically the most worthwhile enjoyment in life. As the saying goes, prostitution to emptiness, gambling for equilibrium, and after all, eating was the most cost-effective enjoyment. Halfway through the meal, Duan Yun couldn't help but speak to the one-eyed green dragon monk standing like a lackey. "Monk, you've been injured." The monk clenched his teeth and responded, "That's right, young hero Duan. If you aren't eating, why don't you rest and heal?" Duan Yun asked. "Young hero saved my life. I was hoping to see if there were any instructions from you," the monk replied. This previously arrogant monk became extremely polite, almost like a completely different person. If it wasn't for the painful transparency of the chest protector that continued to radiate spiritual pollution, Duan Yun might have thought he was another person. This monk was even more capricious than a woman. Duan Yun shook his head and said, "I merely acted against the women from Red House out of enmity. Saving you was simply convenient. There's nothing I need to order. Just heal properly, and try not to curse people in the future." Hearing Duan Yun showing concern about his injuries, the one-eyed green dragon monk was deeply moved. "Young hero has me in his heart. I will remember the teachings of my benefactor. From now on, young hero Duan is my elder brother, Duan Yun." He wanted to stop the monk from recklessly calling him elder brother, but the monk limped away. It was apparent that his injuries were truly severe. The other Taoists and the black man who wanted to get close also left, called away by the one-eyed green dragon monk. "You think you are worthy?" Several people, intimidated by the monk's capabilities, had no choice but to leave. There was nothing they could do. The monks of Taishui Temple were notoriously petty. Afterward, they were even asked by the monk to take care of the corpse. The Red House elder's body was cut into pieces, but still had to be crushed and scattered before being buried in an unpopulated area. It can only be said that a hero only needs to slay demons and eliminate evils. They have much more to consider. Throughout this journey, Duan Yun had been politely addressed as young hero several times, but today was the first time he truly received the treatment of a young hero. 12 dishes and 3 soups. This was the treatment for a young hero after slaying a demon. Even when sleeping at night, he was covered with a cashmere blanket in a clean and tidy room, where even the scent of sandalwood pervaded. Before sleeping, 2 very gentle and beautiful maids offered to help him bathe, but he declined. A young hero must not be corroded by such base pleasures. In the morning, seeing the family's young master calling last night's maid sixth lady, Duan Yun then realized that one of those who offered to bathe him the night before was actually Mr. Lu's sixth lady. A family head's lady running over to bathe him. Rich families sure know how to play. It sounds thrilling, just not suitable for a decent person like him. Upon seeing Duan Yun, the Lu family's young master hurried over and warmly said, "Young hero Duan, the old master has awakened. He will come to see you after getting ready." The maid, young madam, looked at him with eyes brimming with spring, bowing. This woman. It wasn't long before a listless old man with a walking stick came in, wanting to kneel and kowtow to Duan Yun at first sight. Duan Yun quickly supported him. After that, it naturally came to the proper business of collecting silver. The reward mentioned 600 taels of silver. I can temporarily provide 800 taels, and there are also a pair of fairly good quality jade discs. I hope young hero won't mind, Mr. Lu said sincerely. 600 increased to 800, plus a pair of jade discs whose value is unknown, Mr. Lu is quite sensible. Good, good. Killing the Red House madwoman was satisfying, and receiving the silver note was satisfying too. Duan Yun felt he was walking on an absolutely correct path, feeling very good. Since the business was settled, he naturally had to leave. Mr. Lu tried in vain to retain him, his face showing difficulty. Young hero Duan, I have some trouble here. I beg for your guidance. Speak. Thinking of the silver and jade discs given, Duan Yun was in a good mood to talk. Mr. Lu walked over to Duan Yun and whispered, "Don't laugh at an old man, young hero. I've been ruined by that evil woman, completely useless now. But I still have 8 wives. What should I do?" Duan Yun. This old man got into this terrible mess because of his womanizing, even with the mad woman. This person, nearly in the grave. How can he still not be rid of these lowly desires? Seeing his eager look, Duan Yun replied, "You actually asked the right person. I have a secret book of cultivation technique, effectiveness in nourishing yin and strengthening yang. If you can learn it, you should be able to recover. But whether you can learn it depends on your comprehension." Thank you, young hero. Thank you. Mr. Lu was suddenly overjoyed. Duan Yun casually left behind the secret book of Moonlight Pile Method to nourish yin and strengthen yang, and then left gracefully. Mr. Lu, looking frail, stared at the secret book, his eyes shining. If he could master it, he could mess around with young women again. Yes, Mr. Luke's forced marriage was actually considered kind, because it involved feelings, not much different from the young girls he knew. For ordinary women being harmed and discarded like rags. Except for the last unfortunate fight with the Red House evil woman in the gutter, Mr. Lu had always done so, which could be said to be his fine tradition. If he could master it, this fine tradition could continue. Humph, if I am stubborn and force you to marry again in the future, it will only be to people I know well. Chapter 38. You can drive on this broken road? Duan Yun was riding a donkey on the road, feeling utterly satisfied with the silver notes and jade tokens in his possession, as if he was completely filled up with money. He had been in this world for quite some time and had never been this wealthy. It could be said that he had never had more than 50 taels of silver on him. But now 800 taels. This made Duan Yun extremely excited. This was the most rewarding adventure he had had in the name of justice. Thinking about having so much silver, Duan Yun felt somewhat inflated. Since the journey was not far, he didn't want to walk anymore, nor did he want to ride the donkey. He decided to hire a carriage, going directly to Wangchun City. In Fenglin Town, Duan Yun stood in front of a rather luxurious carriage shop, next to a respectful waiting attendant. "Get me a coachman and a horse-drawn carriage that looks modest on the outside but is comfortable on the inside. Destination Wangchun City. Oh, and make sure there's space for this donkey too." With money now, Duan Yun's demands became more understated. Little Gray the donkey didn't realize that its tough life as a donkey would one day include the luxury of riding in a carriage. The attendant scratched his head, looking troubled. "Sir, you mean the coachman should be a woman? We have plain-looking ones here. But whether they're comfortable or not inside, I really couldn't say." Duan Yun showed an expression of disbelief as if saying, "You can also drive on this broken road?" And replied, "I'm talking about the carriage. I don't care what the coachman looks like, as long as they're skilled." Realizing his mistake, The attendant quickly reassured, "Don't worry, sir. The skills will definitely be top-notch, definitely." In fact, the attendant was genuinely perplexed because, as a branch of a prestigious carriage shop, they always followed the main shop's philosophy of people-oriented, joyful riding experience, trying their best to fulfill customers' numerous requests. The precondition, of course, was enough money. There weren't many rich people in the world. Most of them were martial artists, perhaps due to martial arts training. They had quite a few quirks, such as needing 18 types of fresh fruit available at all times while in transit, being served meals by beauties, coachmen who must wear gauze dresses, and so on. In any case, there were all kinds of bizarre demands. Having dealt with such matters frequently and seeing that Duan Yun also appeared to be a martial artist, it was not surprising that the attendant initially misunderstood, leading to the earlier conversation. Once it was confirmed that Duan Yun was a normal customer, the attendant began recommending various services. Duan Yun had never rented a carriage before, and only after renting one did he realize there was so much to it, which felt like selecting network provider plans with different bundles. This period, he felt Wangchun City drawing closer, noticing not only the rising prices but also the increased luxuries on offer, like a shop in Fenglin Town where one could dine while having a foot massage. The luxury carriage shop was similar. Having just received a large reward, Duan Yun, thinking about the abundance of silver in the future, hesitated no further and chose a luxury low-key first-class carriage and coachman. Afterward, a young lady dressed in a light green gauze dress came over pulling a black carriage. The carriage looked a bit scrappy with some paint peeled off and had no fancy decorations, truly modest in appearance. But once Duan Yun sat inside, he realized the hidden extravagance. The wide bench covered with a white fur blanket, suitable for sitting or lying down, followed by the coachman lady gently opening several hidden drawers in the cabin, revealing that the fruits, beverages, and pre-soaked fruit teas were available for enjoyment. It had to be admitted, the carriage really was modest on the outside but extremely comfortable inside, which perfectly met Duan Yun's requirements, except he wasn't very satisfied with the coachman. Because the coachman lady mentioned, for loneliness during the journey, she could also be enjoyed by him at any time. What the hell? Is this a carriage shop or a brothel? Duan Yun, who prided himself on his integrity, how could he possibly enjoy the coachman just like that? So he said to the attendant, "I want to change the coachman." The attendant replied, "Sir, don't be fooled by how gentle Miss Ning looks. She is a truly skilled coach driver who hasn't made any mistakes in the past 7 years. Plus her skills are not bad. She can ensure your safety throughout the journey. In this carriage shop, she is the most sought after." Duan Yun said, "I don't want a pretty one." The attendant immediately realized and said, "Forgot Mr. Duan likes them modest looking. Then I'll get you no female coachman." The attendant gave a look of, "Oh, you're into that," and said, "Right away, sir. I'll arrange a man for you, guaranteed to be skilled." Consequently, a plain-looking middle-aged man took the place of the young lady coachman. The first-class coachman lady left with a look of resentment, clearly unhappy. She had taken the initiative earlier not because she lacked business, but rather because she was actually a top-class coachman and had lowered her own price simply because she was taken by Duan Yun's appearance. Driving the carriage with one hand while sweet-talking the handsome brother was indeed a beautiful thing. Alas, Duan Yun was only interested in men, which depressed her. She had never thought that, in front of male customers, she would lose to a male colleague with a wooden expression. Can the people of Wangchun City die already? Along the way, the smooth running of the carriage was exemplified by the cup on the small table that gently swayed without spilling a drop. Duan Yun had not anticipated that the car rental industry in the Wangchun City area had developed to such an extent. Because of this, he grew more expectant of Wangchun City, a place his father often reminisced about. However, such luxury isn't something ordinary people can afford. 8 taels of silver per use, knowing that in Lishui City, 8 taels of silver could feed him for a year. One has to admit the wealth gap in this world is enormous, just like the gap between martial artists and common folk and livestock. This place being in the plains, the carriage traversed easily, and Duan Yun enjoyed this feeling. Even Little Gray, the donkey who had started working shortly after birth, rarely lay at the rear of the carriage, stretching its hooves and dozing off. With time on his hands while in the carriage, Duan Yun took out the piece of divine iron he had swiped from Thunder God and Mother Sex Madman. The divine iron was inscribed with bizarre runes, some resembling tadpoles and others odd patterns, like the two characters in front of him, which looked like two eyes. Hua Wen and Hua Wu had said that this iron sheet truly fell from the sky, and staring at it for too long could drive one insane. Therefore, Duan Yun was always cautious with it, and after looking at it for a while today he didn't discover anything. It's uncertain whether this is a cultivation technique or not, as he couldn't recognize a single character. However, Duan Yun didn't continue to scrutinize it, fearing that with his supreme talent, even without recognizing any words, he might accidentally learn something and go mad on the spot. The crazy state of that madman from Thunder God and Mother Sect that night had indeed scared him. Only when the carriage was on the road did Duan Yun realize he had been misled by people giving directions. Someone had told him that once he reached Fonglin town, he'd almost be at the outskirts of Wangchun City, and it would definitely take only half a day to arrive. But the carriage had obviously run for a full day and night, and he only arrived after sleeping in the comfortable carriage. It must be said, the coachman was very professional, tirelessly alert and still spirited, displaying a harmonious unity between horse and rider. Dear guest, there lies Wangchun City ahead. Duan Yun held his wine cup, looking in the direction of the voice. Even from a considerable distance, he could still see the towering city walls. From here, the walls of Wangchun City loomed like a lurking giant dragon, appearing especially majestic. This was Duan Yun's first experience of what is called a great city. No, it could even be said to be a heroic city. Yes, having traveled such a long distance in this world, he had never encountered a city of such scale. Cities, towns, and villages he passed grew progressively more prosperous as they neared Wangchun City, far surpassing his hometown, Lishui City. Even with those towns as a build-up, seeing Wangchun City for the first time still left Duan Yun feeling overwhelmed. The sight of Wangchun City had a sort of marvelous, heaven-defying aura. This was the grand city described by his father, built by ingenious craftsmen, bustling with martial arts schools, where even a gynecologist was respected. Even at the city's outskirts, the roads were already bustling, and at a glance, carriages flowed like water and horses moved like dragons. The desolation on the previous roads vanished completely here, replaced by the roaring tide of human voices. On the road, young girls selling flowers occasionally approached to ask if he would buy some, and Duan Yun, in a good mood and charmed by their sensible and cute appearances, bought several bouquets. Kind brother, you will have good fortune. With this beautiful mood, Duan Yun finally arrived at his destination, Wangchun City. Chapter 39 Demon Duan So Terrifying. The carriage followed the stream of vehicles into the city, gradually unveiling a magnificent urban tapestry before Duan Yun's eyes. The early morning had just seen some rain, with the consistently aligned buildings carrying a scent of dampness, tiny droplets steadfastly clinging to the wind chimes hanging under the eaves. With a gust of wind, the droplets shattered, and the sound of wind chimes fell into the crowd, quickly drowned out by loud human voices. The crowd surged like a tide, yet it was a faceless multitude. There were hurried merchants rushing along, girls dressed up brightly strolling about, and hawkers selling candied haws, their cries mingling with the steaming vapor rising from the shops beside them. This was Duan Yun's first encounter with such a bustling city since he arrived in this world. What surprised him was not only the lively scene before his eyes but also the continuous stretch of buildings. Every fixed distance, towering buildings stood on both sides of the road, red ribbons fluttering in the wind under the flying eaves, beautiful like the rosy clouds. Some wooden buildings were even as high as 30 meters, almost rivaling the skyscrapers from his previous life. Duan Yun even saw a huge cage full of flowering branches, with people standing inside, rising towards the upper levels of wooden buildings. Elevator. That was the first reaction in Duan Yun's mind. The level of architectural sophistication was somewhat beyond Duan Yun's expectations, even though he already knew that Wangchun City was built by the skilled craftsmen of the Mo sect. Duan Yun couldn't help but think of that bear, the human-bear hybrid with a human brain implanted in its head. In a world where human brains could be transplanted, creating such a city was not impossible. Mainly because along the way here, the towns he saw were all dilapidated, the martial artists busily fighting and killing, showing many unseemly behaviors. Duan Yun hadn't expected that someone would put effort into this. The carriage stopped in front of an inn named Zuisheng Building. According to the coachman, it was the most famous inn in the outer city of Wangchun City, and also the tallest building where one could stay. The building had 39 floors in total, with the top floor sky room named Star Picking, being an excellent spot to view the city's nightscape, since it was Duan Yun's first visit to Wangchun City, and he had just made a little extra bounty along the way. Naturally, he wanted to experience this somewhat decadent project. Zuisheng Building was probably similar to luxurious cart workshops. As long as the money is given, they could put people first and create happiness through lodging. The receptionists were not the usual inn servants or owners, or at most an aging matron, but uniformly young girls. It made the place look like, how is it that many of Wangchun City's industries seem somewhat brothel-like? However, these girls dressed rather refreshingly and naturally, devoid of the enchanting allure found in brothels, not easily leading guests into wild imaginations. Hearing that Duan Yun wanted to stay in the star picking room, the young lady at the counter couldn't help but smile sweeter, her dimples as pretty as pear blossoms. 15 silver per night. How could she not be happy with that smile? But Duan Yun figured it was about right, comparing with the top-tier aerial suites in the capital's best inns, which never discuss cost-effectiveness, much like those tens of thousands per night presidential suites in modern society. In Zuisheng Building, Duan Yun rode what this world called an elevator for the first time. A wooden, carved cage, both quaint and elegant. As the flower cage rose smoothly, Duan Yun almost felt like he was in a sightseeing elevator. The flower cage was very steady whether going up or down, which from the visible external gears appeared to be meticulously designed, though it was unclear what kind of power it operated on. Could someone have already invented something like a steam engine? Actually, Duan Yun was mistaken. In the unseen underground workshop, over a dozen muscled donkeys were slowly turning the gears by pulling on them. These donkeys had a dull look but were almost as large as oxen, seemingly never tiring, purportedly the latest research result from the Mo sect, having donkeys and oxen mate. This creature was called bull donkey, and the Mo sect's next step was to have humans and oxen mate to see if they could create a bull-head humanoid. Over half a month, Mr. Liu even neglected several of his wives, indulging daily in practicing posture. The technique of swallowing and spitting moonlight, Duan Yun had writings on it, but it proved a bit difficult for Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu had practiced martial arts before, but it was unrelated to the internal cultivation arts, while the posture practice left by young hero Duan combined both internal and external practices, requiring staking postures, breathing techniques, and even absorbing moonlight. If an ordinary person told him this method, he would have scolded the other as a fraud long ago. However, it was a fact that Duan Yun, young hero Duan, used terrifying methods to slay the evil woman of Red House and save the Liu family. How could he not believe it? Moreover, Mr. Liu had an inexplicable obsession with regaining his vigor. Once mastered, he could also molest some young women. It had been a long time since he last molested anyone. After learning from the incident with the last woman who was an evil woman, Mr. Liu decided not to force marriages anymore. He would only molest. Molest someone he knew well. No strangers. Thinking of the beautiful future, Mr. Liu continued to train hard. That night, Mr. Liu finally found the feeling under the moonlight. He was going to succeed. 3 days later, in the early morning, strange screams suddenly came from Mr. Liu's room. The young master rushed over and saw his father with a bizarre, fearful face, saying, "Hurry! Go get Divine Dr. Xue." The Liu family and Divine Dr. Xue were old acquaintances. Divine Dr. Xue always maintained his principles, and would treat anyone as long as the payment was sufficient in silver. 2 days later, Divine Dr. Xue arrived. He looked at Mr. Lu's oddly clean face and expressed a weird look. "My lord, don't speak yet. Let me take your pulse first." Then he started to check the pulse, saying solemnly, "My lord, have you practiced any cultivation technique lately?" Mr. Lu quickly nodded. "I practiced a posture practice." "The one who taught you the cultivation technique? Was he a young man, handsome?" Divine Dr. Shui continued to ask. "Yes, yes, yes." Mr. Lu nodded. Divine Dr. Shui, skeptical, asked, "Did he mention his surname?" "He said his name was Duan Yun. We wanted to call him Duan Juxia, but he asked us to just call him Young Hero." Divine Dr. Shui stopped taking the pulse and said, "My lord, there's no need to undress. I think I know already." Mr. Lu, emotionally agitated, said, "Divine Dr. Shui, save me. No matter the cost in silver, I will pay." Yes, he just liked to molest and marry as a hobby. Divine Dr. Shui shook his head. "Unfortunately, there's no cure." "What?" Mr. Lu's face turned pale. "This belongs to a technique from Demon Duan. After practicing it, it causes shrinking yang into the belly, becoming a woman fallen. Even in my case, I'm powerless to help. Not just you, the renowned Lingshui twin heroes were also affected by this Demon Duan's trick and turned into women. On his way here, he killed members of the Thunder God and Mother sect on a whim. The calamity involving 1,000 men from the Yellow Water Gang was caused by him. Along with the Lingshui twin heroes and your fallen behavior, this Demon Duan is utterly ruthless. Even I am scared when talking about him." Divine Dr. Shui spoke articulately. Hearing this, Mr. Lu knew his situation was utterly hopeless. He spurted a mouthful of fresh blood, shouted, "Demon Duan is so cruel," and then fainted. The young master of the house heard the noise and rushed in, frantic. "Father! Divine Dr. Shui! Don't worry, he won't die." Divine Dr. Shui, calm and composed, started to administer acupuncture. Even if Mr. Lu keeps vomiting blood 5 or 6 more times, he could bring him back, but this fallen transformation was beyond help. One can only say that Demon Duan is truly terrifying. Chapter 40. Is spreading rumors not illegal? Unknowingly, Duan Yun had already spent over half a month in Wangchun City. First, everything was fresh and new to him. He thought that this city was different from others, with ingenious integration of technology into daily life, bustling and full of vitality, making the air even seem sweeter. But as time went by and he became more aware of his surroundings, the city's charm started to wane. This place is not a paradise. Like other towns, it is filled with absurd scenes. Compared to the city center, it is in the city outskirts where the common folk live. No other reason but because the prices in the city are too high. Duan Yun received a reward of 800 pieces of silver, which could be seen as a fortune, but even he started to feel the pinch. He now had around 400 pieces of silver left, and he needed to be cautious with his spending. Previously, when he entered the city, he had paid a silver coin as an entrance fee. That is to say, this city requires an entry ticket. For Duan Yun, it was manageable, but for ordinary people, it was a significant burden. Without earning a silver coin, they would not easily enter the city. The outskirts of Wangchun City are still bustling, yet one can see that the buildings are much more disorganized, and even the stone slabs on the roads are broken and unattended. Inside Wangchun City, as long as you have silver, there are too many luxuries you can enjoy. Duan Yun felt like everything was transforming into brothels along the way. Even when going to a martial arts school, as long as you give enough silver, beautiful senior sisters and junior sisters would relax your tired body after a day's training. The less fortunate folks could only find relaxation among other men. The shops that sell secret books and weapons are also flashy. Duan Yun preferred scouring for secret books in the suburbs rather than in the city. He always felt those selling secret books were like enchanting evil women, ready to bewitch you right at the bookshelves, making it ambiguous whether they were selling books or flesh. This is the oddity of Wangchun City. Constantly exuding a glamour of gold and desires, it incites your cravings. Everything around seems to seduce you into spending. It can be said that Wangchun City is a massive den of extravagance. Duan Yun had played for about 20 days and already spent half his silver there. He is still a young hero detached from mundane desires, not to mention others who can't control themselves. He felt that this grand city continuously absorbed wealth and desires from around. Many outsiders spent their gold and silver here, and once they ran out, they turned to stealing or robbing. Unsatisfied desires in this city end up causing deceit elsewhere. The life in the city outskirts is relatively normal, although the entertainment industries are still thriving. Occasionally you might encounter seductive women at alleys. But today, what he saw gradually became more bizarre and eerie. Wangchun City is governed by the Mo sect, where countless skilled craftsmen gather, who Duan Yun considered the closest to scientists in his understanding. They have martial prowess, but unlike ordinary martial artists who are single-minded about killing and deceiving, they love conducting experiments, although the nature of these experiments somewhat horrified him. For instance, right now there was a long queue on this street. These people in the queue were here to sell their bones. Not selling cattle, sheep, or pig bones, but their own rib bones. Reportedly, someone from the Mo sect wanted human rib bones for their experiments, hence offering a high reward. As the saying goes, with enough money, one can make the devil turn the millstone. The Mo sect, managing Wangchun City, never lacked silver. Thus, under such rewards, countless people lined up for members of the Mo sect to remove 1 or 2 of their ribs in exchange for nearly 100 pieces of silver. 100 pieces of silver in exchange for 2 ribs from their bodies is something Duan Yun would never do, yet for those in line it seemed like a boon. Inside Wangchun City, the temptations that aroused desires were plentiful. Losing 2 ribs enabled them to fulfill long unmet desires or resist the urges and live comfortably in the outskirts for a rather long time, making it worthwhile for these people. After all, it wouldn't kill them. It's said that the Mo sect's skills are exceptional, and removing ribs wouldn't be too painful. So, Duan Yun just watched these people go and sell their bones. When he emerged, his body sustained injuries and he seemed jubilant, even though he was clearly missing a rib or 2. This bizarre scene reminded Duan Yun of the cattle and horses that were kept in pens. Everyone was like cattle and horses kept by the Mo sect. Wangchun City, generating beautiful desires, required silver to fulfill them. The cattle and horses only needed to give up parts of their bodies, such as ribs, to obtain silver. Pretty much an internal cycle where all the money they got was spent there and they couldn't even take their own bodies home. This scene made Duan Yun even more scared and shivered than murder. Duan Yun was pretty sure the Mo sect wasn't normal people. This bustling Wangchun City, underneath, had all these ribs taken out. Yes, this time the Mo sect wanted people's ribs, what about next time? But compared to the murders outside, the actions of the Mo faction are still covered with a coat of gold and silver. Not exploiting without paying, they provided silver and a more stable environment than other towns, which was why countless people flocked here. Watching these people trade their ribs for silver, Duan Yun felt peculiar, and at the same time relieved that he controlled his primal urges and didn't succumb to the desires inside Wangchun City. At this moment, Duan Yun was sitting in a tea house, encountering the second odd incident of the day. Inside the tea house, a storyteller was narrating, and he was talking about someone he knew, Hua Wen and Hua Wu. Have you heard? Recently in Yun's state, a new demon emerged, wreaking havoc everywhere. Who is it? The tea house customers were sipping tea while listening to the storyteller spout his tales. Present company, has anyone heard of the Lingshui twin heroes? Someone replied at this point. I've heard of them, 2 big beards, good with their swords. That's right, in these times, those who dare to call themselves heroes definitely have some skills. But, last month, something strange occurred to the Lingshui twin heroes. What odd thing? Someone asked. The mighty Lingshui twin heroes, the standard big beards, tall men over 7 feet tall, suddenly transformed into women one day, the storyteller said excitedly. What? Transformed into women? Hearing this, the tea house customers certainly weren't sleepy anymore. Exactly. How is that possible? How can a person suddenly turn into a woman? This was also Duan Yun's doubt. That's totally made up. Hua Wu broke up with him not long ago. How could he suddenly turn into a woman? Thinking of the brothers' big beards and square faces, Duan Yun couldn't imagine how bizarre they would look as women. The storyteller must be making up some scandalous story. That's the terrifying thing about the new demon. The reason why the Lingshui twin heroes fell was because they practiced the cultivation technique given to them by the demon. The Lingshui twin heroes, wise their entire lives, were also deceived by that demon. At this, the tea house patrons became more interested. What kind of cultivation technique is so bizarre? Right, turning men into women, fallen? I have a brother who said he'd like to learn that technique and wants me to enjoy it first. Ha ha ha. Exactly. This storyteller, making baseless remarks, doesn't even know the name of the demon. At this moment, the storyteller slapped his wooden gavel and spoke. The name of this demon I did mention, surname Duan, given name Yun, looks young and handsome with clear eyes, leading a donkey. Duan Yun? Well, I turned out to be the protagonist? So, you are saying spreading false words among storytellers isn't illegal, huh? Duan Yun never thought he'd become the protagonist in a storyteller's tale one day.